One, two, three, four, five.
Check, check. Check, 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 check. Okay. Okay, all the panelists in the room, if you could just look at me for 1 second. We obviously don't have enough microphones for everybody in the room, so you're going to be sharing tonight. If you could just make sure you pass the mics back and forth. You need to speak right into them like I'm doing right now. If you're doing one of these, can you hear me that well? Not as well, right? So we're going to do this if we could, and that should work well for everybody. Thank you. Everyone over here, you guys good with that? Pass the mic, speak right into it. Thank you. When they, if like, if they, well, you guys don't have.
I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Pelham Board of Education of December 7th, 2022, and accept a motion to convene in public session in the middle school library.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. Let's rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As opening statement, I'd just like to say thank you to all the teachers, support staff, administrators, parents, students, community members, former board members, everyone who participated in this effort to define what excellence means for Pelham. And thank you to Dr. Champ for spearheading this effort. And a big thank you to all the participants tonight. We're very much looking forward to hearing what you have to say. So I believe Dr. Champ will start us on our work session.
Thank you so much. And I as well thank everyone for their participation. It has really been a pleasure to spend the last few months going around and really focusing on our district's vision and getting back around to each faculty department meeting, having a parent engagement session, really delving into this question about what excellence means to us in Pelham. So tonight, I'm incredibly appreciative for the professional educators who are here tonight. We even have a couple high school students with us as well to talk about, from their perspective and that of their colleagues, what excellence means to us. After the last couple of years in particular, it's really changed the world in many, many ways. So to be able to come back around face-to-face together and talk about what it is that we do, why we do it, and what excellence means to us, I thought it was just the perfect opportunity. And getting to do those meetings was really inspiring to me, to get back connected with our faculty, to once again be reminded why Pelham is such a great district and how proud I am to be the leader of this district. So I thank them all for being here tonight as well, and the folks that contributed to this. So I'm going to try to be very tight and efficient tonight because we've got a lot to pack in and a lot of people here that have worked long days and need to go work long days again tomorrow, and that's around the entire table. So we're going to dive right in. But good evening, and thank you for being here tonight. One of my goals for this year, as the board knows, is displayed on the board, and that goal, let me go to the next one, for this year was to examine how our vision and mission are currently being met and determine what is needed to fully meet our goals in the years ahead. So tonight's session is part of that ongoing analysis. As Michael said, I've met with parents, faculty, staff, students, former board members. And tonight we have the opportunity for the current board to also weigh in on this important discussion. Feedback from the parents and students has been included in tonight's presentation as well. Just as a point of information, I will be completing departmental meetings as we head into the new year because our department meetings and faculty meetings all tend to fall on the same days. I couldn't, and wanting to do them in groups that were small enough to have some meaningful conversation, I had to split my time up a lot. So I'll be completing those as we head into January, but we sent a survey around to everyone so that everyone had an opportunity to contribute something in writing, even if I had not been to their meetings yet. So again, I thank those who have given their time and perspective prior to tonight so that I could share that perspective out tonight with the board. And I'm very thankful for those who are here to share firsthand their perspective with the board as well. As each of us comes to this work, whether we're here tonight as a teacher, an administrator, a clinician, a board member, or a parent, for whatever reason brings us here tonight, we came here for a reason. We have a why about why we're here. I know board members, your salary hasn't gone up in many years here as a board member, and that zero never compounds into anything more. This is volunteer service for you. For many of us this is scary to say, I will be rounding out my 30th year in education this spring. Hard to even grapple with that. We came to this for a reason, and I think one of the things that we've spent this year doing with the administrative team, and again, I think the timing of this was perfect, was to spend we've been spending time thinking about what is our why. So as we dive into tonight's presentation, I want all of us to take just a few minutes to ask ourselves that why question. This last 3 years in particular, we have spent far too much time having to think about the what and the how we were doing everything, because we were recreating everything, not around educational goals, but around health and safety goals. So much of the attention was to the operational and technical that it was really frustrating in many ways to a lot of us to have so little time to focus on the why we had come into this profession, and to have to make or implement decisions that many times went against that why, or that were just completely divorced from those whys. So tonight, I want us to take a few minutes together to reflect on that. So we're going to all together, everyone, audience and board and panelists as well, we're going to do a little think, pair, share with the 5 why protocol. So promise we're going to keep it tight, but hopefully this will be meaningful. So the 5 why protocol, if you've never done this before, is one where I'll pose a question. You answer to yourselves why. If you've got paper in front of you, if you want to jot it down, that's great. But then you ask why to that, and then why to that. So 5 times we're going to dig deep into the why. So, and I'm going to try to time that so that we can stay on track. A minute with each why. If I see that we're ready to move a little more quickly, I'll push us a little more quickly. But this is the think part. So my question to you is why did you choose to go into this? So educators, why you're here, board members, why did you choose to go into service? And this is just for you. Think for yourself. Why are you here in this role tonight? Not just to speak on the panel. We're talking about like the bigger vision of why. So go. See some folks still writing. All right, so then I'm going to ask for the second time. Based off of what you just wrote or just thought, why? What about that is important? Why is that important to you? Okay, just in the interest of time, I'm only giving us 45 seconds. So next time, why is that important? This is number 3. Digging a little deeper. I know it gets a little harder the deeper you go. So why to that? Okay, for the 4th time, why was that important? Why was that important to you? Okay, I think that was number 5, right? 4, there was 4. Okay, one more time. I guess I went ahead. Sorry, I knew it was going to 5, so I went ahead and did 5. One more time. This is the final time. Okay, finishing that thought. So, the purpose of this is to try to dig down deep and to try to identify really the root of why we do, what's important to us and why we do what we do. So we're going to take about the next 2 or 3 minutes. This is the turn and talk part. So just with somebody next to you, either side, share your whys with them. And when you're doing that, I want you to listen for any alignment with your neighbor, any common ground. And afterwards, I'm going to ask a few people to contribute. So think about if you'd be willing to contribute. Share that with the whole group. Okay? 2 to 3 minutes to turn and talk with your neighbors about your why.
Are the mics on? The first one's probably the easiest, but why did you join the board?
Well, I was thinking of my daughter, Abigail, and her kind of COVID learning loss. I guess I was worried about her falling behind because I believe in the importance of education and impact on future and sort of the good life, whatever that means.
Similarly, I want an excellent education for my own 2 children and really for the entire Pelham community. So why is that important? I said, well, I personally received an excellent K-12 public education in New York City, and I think that type of education should be accessible for all kids. So why? And what was your why did it first? Or was it that?
Those were all my brevity.
Oh, I got it. Okay, got
Sorry.
it. No. I all right. Well, well, why is that? And I said, well, not enough kids are given access, and even in communities like ours, there can be stereotypes.
finish up your final thoughts, if you would. Hopefully, a few people have some courage to share out tonight. Just real quick, just raise of hand, how many of you heard common themes with the people that you talked about? Yeah, that's not surprising. I don't think we'd all be sitting here in this room if there wasn't some common belief system and commitment to children and to why we do what we do. Can I ask maybe 2 or 3 people to share out? You can share what the other person said. That's always a nice, safe thing to do. But really sharing out about what you maybe heard in common with the people or person that you spoke with. Thank you. I was counting on someone.
We were very similar. Yep. So we talked about, going into this for obviously the kids, student achievement, moving into providing them a safe, nurturing environment for them to grow, and really getting into making sure that we create citizens that are not only successful in school, but successful in life. And so that's sort of where we ended up. Anything you want to add? Very similar.
That's a lot in 3 minutes.
It is a lot. No, and the idea of building relationships,
Yes.
and which leads to ultimate happiness. Building relationships just leading to ultimate happiness for everybody.
Very good. Any other 2 more common themes from other groups?
I think one common theme from Jess and Jackie and myself was our desire to see students emerging from Pelham into the world who are prepared and ready to lead impactful and productive lives as representatives of our community in the world.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, 1 more. And my administrative team already told me they're taking notes, so they're off limits. Yes, Leilani.
One thing that I thought was that for our students, there should always be someone there that no matter what their background, their circumstances, the things that they're going through, there's somebody there that believes in them, that feels that they can achieve a lot, and that we're there to support them.
Very good. Thank you so much. Appreciate you sharing that. And my guess is many of us, if we thought not too far back, could think of who that person was for us. That is probably a big contributor in why we're here tonight. So as we go through the rest of tonight's work session, thank you for taking the time to do that. Let's remember those whys as we go forward in the common ground that we have between us. We may not always agree on the what and how about how we do our work, but let's always remember that collective why, because that is something that I think persists and something that permeates Pelham in a very special way. So to move us quickly through the presentation, just a quick reminder to folks who are kind of new to this discussion, I wanted to just set things in a little bit of historical context. When I came to the district in 2017, we were wrapping up a prior strategic plan that had been implemented in 2014 to 2019 years. There was significant programmatic growth accomplished under that plan. I think of things especially like our foreign language in the elementary school program was initiated and phased in during that time. IB in the middle school. Maker spaces were supported by the Education Foundation and placed in all of our schools. Mandarin was brought in as a new language as part of the IB program, and that's now expanded up into a full high school program. And then in 2019 to 24, we updated the strategic plan. A lot of similar themes, but a slightly different approach. And the real focus of that strategic plan was deepening the work that and the efforts that had been put into place prior. So we saw expansions of things like flexible furnishings that had begun through the discussion of the K-12 Innovation Committee. MTSS became a strong focus for us in these last few years. Intervention expansion, even prior to the pandemic, and who knew at the time that was going to be something that was critical to our students' continued success. Cultural competence training, digital fluency education, full implementation of Teachers College Readers and Writers Workshop, finally completion of the Science 21 phase-in, and responsive classroom being phased into all of our schools. So work where the seeds had been planted deepened over this next strategic plan. Then comes COVID, a pandemic disruption, which, to be honest, our efforts in those directions may have slowed down, but they remain still focused in that same direction. But here we find ourselves in fall 2020, 2, with time to pause and recenter on how our vision is currently being met and determine what is needed to help fully realize those goals as we head throughout this year and into next year. So one of the things that I did as I visited the groups and we even met with parents is put something before everyone that I don't know that most people really were familiar with, and that is the actual district vision statement. This is on our website. If you go to District About Us, that's where you're going to find it. It's, as I joked with everyone, probably the longest vision statement I've ever seen. But there's a lot of rich language in it. And what I discovered when I met with the former board members, this was drafted around 2000 under Dr. Charlie Wilson's leadership. It was Kathy Draper was the board member who literally, as I read this to the group, remembered the language because they had been so involved in crafting that language. So this vision statement has stood the test of time for going on 23 years, which I think is really powerful in how relevant it is. And as I look at our district and as I talked with our faculty, this vision has become a reality, in my opinion. So that's, I'm hoping, what you're going to hear tonight. But I wanted to put it before you so that we see that there is a pretty broad, time-tested definition of what excellence means to Pelham. Things like high expectations and standards, creative, critical thinkers who make ethical choices, working independently and collaboratively, problem solvers, lifelong learners, responsible citizens in a democratic society, prepared for a highly technological and global community, celebrating diversity, creating a sense of belonging, contributing to the greater community, and dedicated to continuous improvement. We also are very familiar with the much easier to remember motto, the inspiring a standard of excellence for all students. Not quite sure where that originated or when that originated. Dr. Garcia said it predated his time in the district, so somewhere between 2000 and 2010, that came to be a thing. And I don't know if some of our district historians may know better than me. But then in the new strategic plan, we also added another statement, which to me is, I think, a nice synthesis of that vision. Pelham community will develop empowered, adaptable, well-balanced individuals who are equipped to meaningfully contribute to our local, national, and global society. So those are the kind of the driving texts of who we are as a district that have been there and been a bit of a North Star for a long time. In approaching tonight's conversation, I want to bring forward one other item that has been developed over the last few years and use that as our conceptual lens for the conversation. It's the Pelham Inquiry Cycle. And this was developed under the leadership of Dr. Callahan. He could not be with us tonight. He, in partnership with Dr. Garcia, I believe the administrators, I think the K-12 Innovation Committee may have also had some involvement in this, developed this model. Its purpose was to provide a tool for ongoing thinking and analysis rooted in the scientific process, but expanded in such a way that it can be implemented across disciplines. To build a strong instructional culture anchored in the various aspects of our vision, things like creative and critical thinking, collaboration, communication, problem solving, continuous improvement. One can enter this inquiry cycle from any point, so tonight we're going to enter that cycle through the questioning stage. And that's, again, what I've mentioned already. That's what this fall has been for me, questioning. So throughout the fall, as I visited various meetings, I posed the following questions to faculty. There was rich conversation at each meeting and a lot of common themes across the district and across stakeholder groups, which was exciting and rewarding to see. As although we may not see things eye to eye on approach, the goals and outcomes are often very much aligned. So the questions being, what does excellence mean to you? Very simple question with a lot of very complex answers. How are we delivering on our vision and motto? And what is needed to further deliver on and achieve that vision? And I'm appreciative that you're going to hear directly from some folks on those questions tonight. As a continuation of that discussion with staff, we last week held a World Cafe styled event on the 28th with parents to explore similar themes with parents and community. We were really excited. People are so impressed when I read this number because in other districts, people are struggling to get families to come out for community engagement events. We had over 50 people who came to Cafeteria C last Monday night to spend an hour and a half exploring these questions. And it was really incredible and I said it to the group there, to see the alignment with what parents' hopes are for their children and their outcomes that they're looking for, and with what our faculty are striving to deliver for students. It was also great to hear the smiles and laughter of the people in the room, People met new people. Some people did see people they hadn't seen since before COVID. So to continue, and I know our Community Engagement Committee has been specifically interested in fostering these in-person opportunities. So it was a wonderful chance to make those connections with our families. So very briefly, I'm going to share just some word clouds with you. These are really based off of word frequency from the data that I collected during those conversations, as well as surveys that were submitted. And I'm going to start with this one because another thing that I do every year, but certainly did it this year and included the same topic in our conversations, is I meet with student groups. Each year, once per quarter, I meet with a group of high school students and a group of middle school students. And it gives me a chance to get to know them better, but also to hear from them what are their thoughts and concerns and questions and ideas on ways that we can improve the district. So it's great, and I appreciate the administrators sit in with me, and we have some really meaningful conversations. And I think this fall's was probably one of the most meaningful, especially when I met with the high school students who are just incredibly articulate, and a couple of them are with us tonight. So when I meet with them, they spoke very eloquently and passionately about their appreciation for their teachers and the relationships and support that their teachers provide to them, and the many staff members, not just teachers, but counselors, clinicians, a variety of support staff and administrators. They also spoke about the many courses, clubs, and programs that students are afforded that enable them to achieve their individual goals and pathways as they move through our schools, and especially as they complete high school and turn their attention toward what they want to do beyond the four walls of Pelham. Personalization and individualization were key from where they stood, and they recognized that everyone was different and had a different future to pursue. When I spoke with our faculty about what it means to them, they wholeheartedly focus on doing what is best for each individual child. They model behaviors such as persistence, flexibility, collaboration, high expectations, continuous improvement, and creating a sense of belonging. They model that amongst one another, and they create that amongst one another and then model that for their students. And then they turn around and design learning experiences to foster those same skills and qualities in their students. They recognize individuality of each student and work to help them at achieving and challenging themselves to grow into the well-rounded human beings who are equipped to function independently, as we've said in our preamble, in our local, national, and global society. When we asked our parents as well had high expectations for rigor and looked for a broad range of outcomes that prepare each child to become a successful, productive, well-rounded human being, much in line with what Will articulated in sharing out earlier. And also much in line with what the faculty articulated as their goals for our students as they move through our schools. There was strong agreement with the outcomes of the vision statement and a desire to see evidence of those outcomes in an individualized manner. So when we turn to the question of what do parents need to kind of strengthen those partnerships, they ask for proactive communication about student learning to help foster true partnership. That certainly stood out as a strong theme, especially as we work to recover from the challenges of the past 2 years. The more proactive communication about how students are doing inside and outside of the classroom, the better. Students, parents certainly are maintaining the high expectations that they have had for students for traditionally in Pelham. They want to know their children are on track, and they recognize time is precious and many of the experiences that were lost over the past few years due to the pandemic. At the same time, when we talk to our students carry those same high expectations of themselves, yet they have a deep understanding as well as what they have missed over the last few years, and express the need for the deep need for flexibility, understanding, and compassion from their teachers as they deal with the stress and the pressure of a high-achieving school district while still trying to maintain the mental health needs that they all recognize are far more common and pervasive than they were in the past. They shared how it's not just the student who slides into his class with his hoodie up and puts his head down who's dealing with anxiety and depression and isolation, but it's also the student who walks in looking seemingly perfect and put together, who may be struggling and who needs to be met with empathy, understanding, and compassion. The more they can see their teachers as human beings, the more connected and understood they feel. And the more we can provide opportunities to build community amongst their peers, the stronger they will become as individual students and as a class. And when we spoke with faculty, the question really was, what do you need to help you continue to deliver on this vision and move your own professional work to the next level? There were, across the board, there was consistent themes from faculty expressed that certainly continuing the challenge of holding students to high expectations while providing the support necessary for them to achieve their individual best was important, especially coming through the pandemic. One of the biggest themes that I heard across levels was the theme of time. And I was going to say, I'm expecting to see some nods over here. Time for many different things. So time to plan, time to learn new curricula, time to collaborate, time to prepare for classes. It was very clear in speaking with them that the students walking through their doors today are not the same as the students that were walking through their doors in 2018 and 2019. Even 2019-20, that year ended very differently, and our teachers have rewritten their lesson plans every single year since. And they still cannot pull out that lesson, not that they ever would, but they can't pull out the lesson plans as they were in 2018 and 2019 and deliver them the same way, because the students walking through their doors have had a whole different life experience and a different learning experience. So we are still, day in and day out, rewriting lesson plans for the students in front of us and meeting them where they are. We heard a lot as well about needing time to concentrate on the work that is phased in, the many different initiatives that have phased in over the past few years through those strategic plans. They really have asked for no new initiatives to be added on top. I figure I'll say it before you say it, so you know it's okay to say it. But that was very much a recurring theme. They look for the opportunity to provide meaningful feedback on how things are rolling out and how best to educate children. They're continuing to appreciate and look for support from administrators, and they need respect and trust to be extended from parents in our community. They're highly trained professionals who have committed their time and talents to the children of Pelham. We're incredibly fortunate to have such a dedicated staff who go above and beyond continually and are invested in our students' success, both inside and outside the classroom. To get a little bit more specific at the elementary level, teachers also expressed a desire for more support staff to assist with a variety of tasks, be it preparation of materials, assessment administration, substitutes to help cover classes, whether it's for absences or professional development, and continued support for interventionists as data shows that we have need. At the secondary level, teachers more specifically ask for consideration around consistency of teaching assignments from year to year so they can really hone their craft, consistency of co-teaching partners for those who are doing integrated co-teach. We have a lot of master schedule challenges due to shared staff and a shared facility. So trying to keep those stable partnerships would help them to better meet the needs of students. More staff in some departments that are carrying a lot of teaching overages. Overages, for those who don't know, teachers generally at the secondary level is the easiest mental example to think of. They teach 5 periods a day. If they take on a 6th class, we can call it an overage. So they're paid for that, but it's additional time. It's additional prep time. It's additional teaching time expended. So many of our departments have a lot of teachers teaching overages. Smaller class sizes in courses with higher academic needs, and discipline-specific professional development and learning were the requests from our secondary folks. Those are the themes that I walked away with as some of the highest top notes. What I want to do now for the remainder of our time together, though, is let you hear from our folks directly. So we're going to begin with a video, and Pia is going to help me out by hitting the link, really asking these questions. What does excellence mean to you, and how are we delivering on our vision and mission?
Excellence is really hard to define because it's not one specific thing. It's kind of like the intersection of many things.
Excellence means having a sense of resilience. It's not easy to be resilient to overcome challenges. When a student knows that it's expected that they can achieve, then they start to believe that they can achieve. It's an ongoing process. It's a mindset that they can move forward knowing that there are high expectations for them and that they're not trying to reach those goals on their own. We're there with them, in there with them, helping them to achieve.
We usually tie excellence to AP scores and, our highest achieving students. And as a teacher who teaches calculus honors and algebra with seminar, like different students with different ability levels, to me, a school is as good as, even its most struggling learner.
It's a community coming together to help a child grow. So it's teachers and parents and students and other school staff and personnel all coming together with this one common goal of helping a child learn and grow.
Overcoming obstacles and fears to help you to be the best that you can be and do your very best. Excellence requires commitment to succeed and to grow in whatever you are undertaking.
Excellence to me really means making a connection with students and fostering a love of learning, of reading, and a sense of belonging, which is something I think we've really done in the Library Media Center, that this is a space that's truly for everyone in our community.
Excellence at Pelham Middle School is when students help both those in our community and those in other communities in the world. To me, excellence means as a community in our school of both parents, teachers, and students, we are making sure students are getting the most out of their education. And although each student might have their own personal best in terms of extracurricular activities and their in-school education, they're still getting the most out of all of their experiences here at Pelham.
Excellence is also displayed greatly throughout the wide variety of extracurriculars that are offered, helping students thrive in both non-academic and academic fields. Some focus on helping those within our community, such as the No Place for Hate and Access Creates Equity, or ACE Club.
In Pelham Middle School, I think that we do a wonderful job with the academics, but what really separates ourselves from other schools is the sense of community that we build beginning at the classroom level and really bringing it up to a larger building level.
Every single day we are reading data, making sure that students are growing and learning, making sure that interventions are working. We are trying to be patient, watching that student growth, making sure that, if a change needs to be made, that's what needs to be done, and that, we work as a team to make these decisions. And I think that's a huge piece to that whole child.
It's allowing them the opportunity to reflect and see their growth, so that way they understand that it's not necessarily a score on a test, but rather where you started and where you ended.
A big part of the district's vision is building critical thinkers and creative thinkers, and students who should be able to work both independently and in groups. And one of the big focuses that we use in our math classrooms is starting out building community within our classrooms. On a day-to-day basis, we really switch the modalities between independent work, peer work, small group work, to make sure the students are using appropriate content language, to make sure students are really striving toward both the content but also being respectful of their peers.
In class, I think the teachers are really great with making sure all students are involved and participating. There are even days where we'll stray completely far from the lesson because we're just having constructive conversation about something relative to what we were learning that day. And outside of class, there's a lot of options for clubs and extracurricular activities, which allow students to personalize their interests and their education.
It's in the struggle that they're really learning it. Do I go around in my daily life, factoring quadratics or, finding the antiderivative? I don't do that, but I know that when there's a challenge, I can look to find a solution, and I'm going to persist in being able to solve that specific problem. So it translates just in life, not just in the classroom.
Sometimes the slower pace, the smaller group, and sometimes just hearing the message and getting the practice a few extra times is just what some students need. So we do not reteach the curriculum. We really do fill in those foundational skills that they need to access that curriculum.
Pretty simply, excellence is the E at the end of Pelham Pride. Pelham Pride is our acronym for success, starting from the time we first introduce ourselves to the elementary school to middle school. Being prepared, respectful, getting involved, being determined when you need to come back to ask for questions, clarification. You achieve all those, you achieve excellence.
Most of the work that we've been doing this past fall with our sixth graders focuses on the digital citizenship curriculum, in which we're really preparing our students to become citizens of a technologically advancing world.
We've been working on descaling digital drama, teaching students how to find authenticity in messages online.
So learning is a continuous journey that I challenge my students to experience on a daily basis through our conversations, whether it be experiences in the classroom or out of the classroom. I wish for my students to grow as individuals and as collaborators in this ever-changing world.
Well, I strongly believe that using responsive classroom techniques helps so much. For anybody, for all of us, we really achieve excellence when we feel like we have a sense of connection and a sense of belonging. That helps us to believe in ourselves and helps us to move toward excellence. So my goal every day when I work with my students is for them to feel like this is the place where they truly belong. When students know that there are high expectations for them, when they feel like they belong, when they feel like they are understood, when they feel that others are cheering them on and believe in them, they start to believe in themselves. They start to achieve even more and they strive for excellence.
In order for a student to achieve excellence, I think they need to feel supported by everyone in their community. I think that as students, sometimes it could be overwhelming to try and stay on top of what you're doing and try and have a social life. So I think the more understanding and comprehensive our teachers are and the people we look up to, the better our experiences will be, and Pelham is really good at that.
I think the core of it is with children. During an afternoon of sort of enrichment time, I might see some children sort of like playing with some wood planks and building this sort of massive structure, and you hear them kind of exchanging ideas and trying different things out together, and then it suddenly goes from 2 people to maybe 5, as time passes, and then it ends up being 10, and then the whole class is kind of gathered around trying to kind of figure it out and how to make all the planks balance. And inevitably you'll hear sort of like a crash and the sighs that go with it, or potentially even the stadium cheers and sort of the hugs and high fives. But in the end, I think regardless of the outcome, I think that you see smiles from the children, and I think those smiles is the excellence.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so thank you. Thanks for that. Many of the faces around the table were in the video as well. I thank them for their time. I really want to send a shout out to Steve Ravita, our AV TA. He worked all weekend on that. He always does a phenomenal job. So Steve, I know he's not with us tonight, but I incredibly thank him for his work on that. And all the people, Alex, who helped planning with this, and those who gave their time to contribute to the video. And we're going to use that to kick off the discussion portion. So tonight, there's a list of panelists. It's a lot of folks who've tried to get broad representation. So that means we are going to split our discussion into elementary first and then secondary. So we'll be doing a little bit of swapping. I've asked Dr. Bowman to take a few notes as we do that, since we're going to be in 2 different groups. And again, looking for what are those common themes, K-12, that surface as we go through our conversation. So for this part, we've got 3 guiding questions for tonight that we're going to ask our panelists to start with. We don't all have to answer every question. I know many of you came very prepared, so I'll just pose the question. We'll start with the first one. And then if you want to just, get my attention or just speak out, I think we're small enough to do that. We're gonna have, for this portion of the conversation, we're going to allocate maybe about 15 minutes, 15 to 20. So we'll try to keep pace there. So to begin with, you've had a lot of chance to think about it, hear about it, talk about it. So given the district's motto of inspiring a standard of excellence for all students, what does excellence mean to you and to those in your department or school?
I guess I'll go first.
Great, thank you, Pia.
So I said it on the video, and I wholeheartedly believe it, that excellence is not one thing, it's several things, right? It's the intersection of motivation. It's the intersection of coming to the table and the realization of full potential. It's helping a student when they need it, even when they don't ask for it. So it's really the formation of certain lifelong habits as a learner. Not only showing them what it means to be curious, but really allowing them to be curious for their entire lives. And really like the development of the whole child. I think as educators, post-pandemic, I think aside from the academic, which is obviously one of our main focuses, really it's the social and emotional health of a child and getting them to start the day with a smile. I know Leilani mentioned it with our responsive classroom and our morning meetings, but excellence to me is just kind of that realization of the full potential and what it takes as an educator, as a community to get that child there.
Would like to piggyback on that?
Yeah, I'll agree.
Sarah?
I just want to agree from a psychological perspective. There's a term called secure base, and I wrote that down. And it's based on parent-infant attachment, but it really trickles down to, educators and that connection. And when you have a secure base or you feel secure, then you're able to take risks. Then you're able to ask questions. You're able to be your true, authentic self, and that's what we want our students to be authentic, to be, to know their values, to not be swayed by, and to be rooted in those values, to be characters, lifelong characters. Building character is what teachers need to do. And on top of that, I was thinking of time. I just wanted to mention about time. The theme seems to be time allows for being present. And when you're present with an infant, right, you're creating that secure base. So teachers, when they are allowed to be present with children, then they don't have to multitask and they don't have other things going on, but they can really be present and not reactive, have the most impact, I find.
Beth?
I'll go, sure. I feel like I could respond and piggyback to what everybody's saying. But really, when I think about excellence, I think about making smart decisions. And we all work really hard and have a limited number of hours to make an impact for our children and to help them grow. In the classroom, that happens with like the deliberate questions and support you give students and the deliberate connections you make with children. In my role as a staff developer, that also extends to teachers, and really thinking about what teachers need, listening to teachers, looking at data, and making deliberate decisions in terms of the professional development we do based on the data and what teachers are seeing and feeling in their classrooms with their children, and making decisions about that for excellence.
Thank you. Emily?
I'd like to jump in there because I have to say, I've learned more math from her in my entire life than I ever had in elementary school. I understand math better because of Beth and all that she has done and all she's brought. She's always in the right place at the right time when I come clamoring for a question. But when I think about all this, I always ask a wise young man, I like to, otherwise known as my son Matthew, who has been a Pelham student since kindergarten. He is now a current sophomore. And when I'm asked to do things or comment upon these things, I go to him first, and I asked him what he feels excellence is, and he said, "Mom, it all comes down to relationships." And he went on to cite many, many examples, to include the famous Jane Walls sitting over there, who my son is a big soccer player, and I've been trying to get him involved in different things, got to get you ready for, colleges and whatnot. I get caught in that trap myself. And he came to me the other day, he said, Mom, I've got to get on that yearbook. He said, I have to be with Miss Walls. And when I see that, it really, I get emotional, because that's what excellence is. It's belonging is a basic human emotion, and it's a need. We need to belong. And when kids have that kind of relationship, when teachers are given the time to work together. I have two wonderful grade partners, a wonderful principal who allows us that safe space to work. The time that we do have, we use. The kids are happy. They're learning. We've embraced Science 21 with the time we have, the ability we have to work together, the relationships that we've built. That's all because of relationships, and that is excellence. The responsive classroom. We've had amazing, amazing sessions through that we've all been able over the years to bring back to our classrooms. And that's excellence. Those are relationships. And as I said, we get caught up in the test scores, the regents, the SATs, the state tests. We all get caught up in that trap. But we're all in this for the long haul, and we're all in this together. You heard Ms. Sinertia up there when she was saying everyone in the community. And we go back to the student, the word splash thing. When the students, the stress, those things, that emerged from theirs. So it's, I feel, important for all of us here and all of us listening, for excellence, for true excellence, is to build those relationships. And for all of us to work together to find that place where we can bring excellence to our children.
Thanks, Emily. Leilani, did you want to add?
Yeah, I completely agree with the sense of belonging. For anybody to feel like they can achieve, for them to grow, not just academically, but emotionally and mentally too, they have to feel safe and feel like they belong, that they're in a place where the community really cares about them, that they're there to support them, and then they feel like they can truly trust that if they try something new and maybe don't get it right away, that others are there cheering them on and saying, it's okay, you got this, keep going. And so those relationships that we build are so important. Responsive Classroom has been amazing with that, because it starts from the moment the students get to our doors. We greet them at the door. We have our wonderful morning meeting, and if you ask students, they'll say, like, that's my favorite part of the day. They love being able to share and to communicate and get to know us too. And then we also share, we have goals too. We have things that we're working on as well, and our goals are tied together, and we all help each other and support each other. I'm feeling safe here. You should feel safe here too. And all of that helps our students to feel resilient, to feel like they can bounce back, that they can try new things, that it's okay, that this is a safe space for them to do anything, to try anything, knowing that we're all a community there cheering them on and there to catch them.
I think from a building leader perspective, it's great to hear the teachers talk about what they build in the classrooms with the teachers. And I could say there's not a classroom I don't walk into in Pelham where I don't learn something from the teacher that's there. They're all amazing. But as a building leader, I have the privilege of working with staff and building that trust, collaboration, problem solving with the adults. And I think that's where it starts. I think when you give teachers the time and the autonomy to make decisions that are right for kids, you really see what they can do. And I think it's a culture, as a building leader, you hope that when you have to step away, that it's a culture that sustains. And I can say personally that, recently having to take a leave, I can tell you that everything that, I expected to happen in the time I was gone happened. Data meetings on 304 students, all happened. Teachers had MTSS meetings and groups were formed and interventions continued. Kids were cycled in and cycled out. Professional development continued. Everything that you would expect to happen continued. And that's what you hope you can promote and sustain, a culture of trust and strong relationships that will be there whether you're there or not. And that's truly a privilege as a building leader that you get to sort of cultivate.
Related sort of to the relationships. While I'm in all the elementary schools, my office is at Hutchinson. So when I start my day there, I get to open the doors and greet all the kindergarten, first and second graders that come into the building. And if you want to see excellence, just come stand at the door and watch children walk into school. And as they skip, like who skips? K1, 2 kids skip into school and down the hall to their class. And with big smiles, they wait and they greet each other and they grab each other's hands and they walk in when they see a friend who's tentative about getting in. They feel like they belong there, and it's beautiful.
I think if I'm allowed to make a transition to the.
I was just going to ask, you read my mind. Thank
and
you.
so I think one of the most fortunate things about my job is that I get to go in and see teachers and administrators work together while we're learning together, but also get to see the children when they're learning together. And what is remarkable to me, and I think a testament to how safe and invested and excited the students are, is how easily they are able to be self-reflective when they're asked to be self-reflective. So in many aspects of our curriculum, students are given checklists, like what are the expectations? They know what the expectations are. And they're not afraid to look at their work and improve their own work. They're also not afraid to talk with their neighbor and discuss how their story could get even more exciting with, a better lead, or they're not afraid to take risks when they are pushed to reach, I think, a level academically that they themselves might not even have realized they could achieve. It happens every day in the classrooms, and at the same time, teachers challenging each other and administrators and teachers working together, asking why are we doing things this way, and not being afraid of having that conversation. It's one of the most important things we can do as educators, is continually push ourselves to get better. It's at the core of what Pelham is about, and to me that is really excellence. It's the constant state. It's in the vision of continuous improvement, being reflective, not being afraid to ask questions, to be questioned, to answer those questions, and to have the information that we need to push all of our together to work towards becoming better every day.
Would anyone else want to share into our second question? What are some exemplary learning experiences or approaches that you and your colleagues use to foster those desired skills, traits, and learning outcomes?
I just thought of our fifth grade buddies, which I know Ms. Kedrick can talk, but I always find that the best interventions are when you're asking students to help other students. It's the best intervention for a counseling session. It's the best intervention for behavior. It's the best intervention for learning critical thinking. I don't know. It's really helpful. I know Emily, I'm looking at Emily, she's a fifth grade teacher, and so she sees it too.
So our fifth grade buddies are fifth graders partner with kindergartners, fourth graders partner with first graders, and they engage in a ton of activities. It could be STEAM challenges. It could be just reading buddies, reading outside together. It could be doing a joint morning meeting. And you see the kids really make connections, and you see those connections extend beyond the school day. I've had students in the summer send video messages to their fifth grade buddy saying, good luck in the middle school, I'm gonna miss you. Parents have forwarded us those messages. When they're doing their final walkthrough at the end of the school year, kindergartner is like in tears, so happy tears, because they're seeing their fifth grade buddy really achieve something so great, and they know that they're gonna be there years ahead. I agree with you. It is really special.
It even went, my son we always go to the Chappaqua Book Fair, and he bought a book for his kindergarten buddy, who is now in my class. So that was very cool. That's something, and the boy in my class came to me one of the first days of school. He said, your son was my kindergarten, but my fifth grade buddy. So that's a great example. Thank you for Dr. DeSoy for bringing that up.
I think we talked before a bit about modeling our behavior and modeling for students. And in our math PD, one of the things that we started a few years ago, actually pre-pandemic, was we had done some professional development on number talks. And we had started back then of modeling it and talking to teachers about the why and the research and why it's important. And things got a bit lost during the pandemic. And then coming back in, teachers had dabbled with it and had tried it out, and I had helped support some teachers along the way. But again, this year we brought it back by integrating it into our curriculum pacing. So it really became part of everybody's classroom practice. And again, it's been wonderful because teachers have had me come in and do demos or coach them as they're doing math talks and number talks. And really seeing that, things take time. You mentioned about new initiatives and things, right? You can't do something once and expect that everybody has it and they're great at it. And so this, this has been something that we've been working with teachers over time to develop that, and I'd say we're still developing it, but it's really been wonderful to see sort of the excellence of teachers working together and trying it out and honing their practice.
Just to build on Beth and Emily, I think it's also, fostering collaboration is really the approach that just sticks to my head. With my 2 grade level partners, it's the visibility with which we collaborate. And the students see that as adults, we still take the time, we still need that connection. And then obviously enforcing that in our classroom in varied partnerships throughout the day in different group sizes. I think it's really important for them to get that interpersonal connection and see that the collaboration needs to be there and it continues their entire life.
Yeah, Leilani.
To go along with that, I was thinking with collaboration, one of the things with Responsive Classroom at the beginning of the year is the students set up their rules and expectations of the classroom themselves together as a group. And it all starts with their hopes and dreams. So they have this big conversation. What are your goals? What are your hopes and dreams for this year? What do you hope to achieve? And they all discuss it. And then from there, we talk about, well, what do you think we need to do here to make sure everybody's hopes and dreams come true? And then we boil it down to 3 basic things, and then they can follow through with that on the rest of the year. We continue to talk about it, and they can even say, well, we're doing this because we really want our hopes and dreams to come true for this year. And they will work together and collaborate and make sure it happens for everybody.
Excellent. We're running a little short on time for the group, so we'll transition to the last question. And some of you touched on this a little bit, but we'll pose it anyways. How do you maintain those high expectations and balance them with the student mental health and wellness and readiness to learn, especially given the challenges of the last few years?
I'm just going to say flexibility.
Yeah.
I think that's the number one thing. I think the past few years have shown that we really rely on the resilience and adaptability of ourselves as educators and our students, and allowing for compassion, allowing for things to go in a natural kind of way. And sometimes, I think it was mentioned on the video, sometimes a lesson will go astray, but it's still a teachable moment. And just allowing for the quantitative data to work hand in hand with the qualitative data that we're receiving.
As building leaders, we talk about how important it is for student collaboration, but teacher collaboration is just as important. And, as I look at my elementary colleagues, this year and during the summer, we've spent a lot of time talking about professional learning communities, something we've been engaged in Pelham for a very long time. But unfortunately, with COVID, a lot of those professional learning communities went from problems of practice to really the nitty-gritty, how do we get kids to learn virtually? And so we really wanted to get back to teachers working together on SMART goals. We want them, the same way we want kids to feel like they achieve something at the end of the year, we want teachers to feel like they achieve something at the end of the year. And so we've really spent some time reviewing protocols for professional learning communities, really talking to teachers about problems of practice, really looking at a cycle of inquiry for professional learning and what that could look like. And we've even dedicated the time. We always say we don't have enough time, but as administrators, we really looked at our faculty meeting schedules, and we dedicate 1 faculty meeting a month to that PLC work because we realize the value and importance of teacher collaboration. So that's something we sort of have done this year to sort of support that.
I think also a lot of it there's this tension, right, between knowing both sort of the excellence of all these great things in education that we want teachers to learn, but really for the students and the standards and where students should be, right, to meet the standards by the end of the year. But we also know that the pandemic has sort of taken a punch at that, and so we have to really recognize students and meet students where they are and help move them forward toward meeting those standards. But we have to recognize all the students are bringing a lot to the table. They all have knowledge, and they all have an entry point into what we're teaching them. And so it's really being sensitive to that and what we're teaching, and being aware of what the students are bringing, and making sure you recognize that in the kids in the classroom, that giving everybody an opportunity to show what they are bringing to the table, to feel that confidence.
Beth, I agree 100% with what you just said. I feel that, meeting the children where they are, I feel that fractions is a perfect example. Walking into the 5th grade, Beth and I talk about this, that they missed that opportunity during the pandemic to play with fractions and to learn and gain a deeper understanding. And we have to meet them where they are. And we have to, I cycle back as I know our elementary time is almost done here, but I cycle back to all the things that I've said in terms of, it comes back to the responsive classroom and building those relationships and educating, our job also educating parents to the point that they understand and they have that, they have an open line of communication with us so that, they understand where their children are, and that it may not be exactly where the standards at this moment say they are. But we can't brush a pandemic under the carpet. You can't. You have to accept children for where they are, mentally, emotionally, academically, and move forward. And I think that that's an important piece of this, is all of us moving forward. We can all talk about what excellence is and things and that and what it is, but we need also that idea of that continuous improvement, and how do we achieve that? And how do we work towards that in realistic terms, I think, is an important piece of this.
I know, when I saw that question, and I know we have to go, but when I saw that question, I thought, those two things aren't mutually exclusive. Like high expectations and mental and emotional wellness, I believe in social emotional wellness, of course, but they're not two different things. When we're achieving one, we're achieving the other, so.
Very good. Dr. Thompson, did you have one thing to add? Maybe we'll let you be the final word. No? Okay. All right. Yeah, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and I know our secondary folks are waiting. So we are going to ask, we're going to do a little switch. For those who can stay around, if you could, we'd really appreciate it, because I know the board hasn't had a chance to talk, and they'll probably have questions for you. Thank you for the wisdom. If we could trade places, and I'm going to invite our secondary colleagues to find a spot at the dais.
Take 2 aspirin, call me in the morning.
If you want to be off the hook, you can.
I can double up.
Okay, yeah, if you would, double up. Thanks. Sorry. Okay, so I was trying to be very representative, and as you know, once you get to secondary, you get lots of departments. So we don't have every department represented here tonight, but we have many of them, and very much appreciate them being here and their patience waiting for tonight. So you've heard the prior conversation, and I'm sure you've had lots of thoughts and things really coming to mind. We started with elementary, which is our foundation, and now we're moving to our culmination, the transition from secondary to those who really kind of finish off a child's experience as they move through our schools. So thank you for being here, and also we have our students here as well. So I've shared with Lucas, and I'm sure he shared with Riley, really same questions, from a student perspective, though. So we're looking forward to hearing their voices as part of tonight's conversation, too. So I'm going to dive right into question number 1. I'll pose that, and as we did with elementary, even though you're a bigger group, I think folks can just indicate if you'd like to contribute. So given the district's motto of inspiring a standard of excellence for all students, what does excellence mean to you and or those in your department or school? Riley looks like she wants to start off down here. Okay. And I should add, I think Mrs. Finkelstein had her in, Miss Finkelstein in second grade. So we had a nice reunion when we got here. Riley.
So I think from the student's perspective, excellence is, it's not that, I don't think excellence specifically has to do anything with, school or with any, like, learning. I think excellence is, when a student wakes up in the morning, it's about, getting to the next thing, Some kids' excellence is waking up in the morning and just being able to get to school and being able to, try and put their effort in where they can. And for other students, it's, getting straight A's. For other students, it's pleasing their parents and, going with the norms of society in which, I need to compete and I need to do well in AP classes and things like that, when excellence is really just you want to do what you can for yourself, and that's unique to everyone. Everyone learns differently and has different experiences that teach them things. So, for excellence for me is, getting everything I can out of each day and learning from every experience that I have had and will continue to have in my future, and I want to just continue to better myself. And I think for a lot of students, that is what excellence is, but I think also in the high school, I think that should be facilitated a lot more than it might be. That, everybody's different, everybody learns different, everybody, has different goals, and we want to reach every student's goals, and that's what excellent is to students.
Thank you. Lucas, do you want to jump in on that, and then we'll turn to our faculty?
So I think that excellence is prospering not only on an academic level, but also on a personal level. I think it's encouraging academic growth, but also knowing that your peers and your teachers and the administrators have your back and they're there for you. And I think that it's not only encouraging, like I said, growth from an educational standpoint, but also allowing me to learn about myself and my own identity in high school, which is obviously imperative. So,
great.
And I also think that it's about balance and being able to balance a sort of school-work balance, and having that there allows me to reset myself and come back stronger and be able to excel in school. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you. Okay, who would like to lead off from our faculty? Question of what is excellence? Yes. Right.
I would like
Raquel.
to piggyback on what Riley's saying.
Get close to the mic.
I think there's a misconception that excellence is tied to the number of AP courses that you take, the scores that you get, similar to what she was saying. But I think what makes us excellent is when we have every student, regardless of ability level, be able to be successful. So when we have, I have students, like I said in the video, I teach 2 different levels of courses. I teach calculus, but I also teach the Algebra with seminar. And when there are times that I tell my students in my seminar class that if I had a company, I would hire you. Like, they're amazing, their effort, their persistence, and they're not your AP student, but they're amazing students, and I've seen so many of them be successful, and some even come, to our school. I've seen heard so many success stories with my students that were not in, my calculus honors class. So I think that's what makes us excellent. Are you passing that to me? I don't know.
I believe she is, Jessica.
Okay. So definitely piggybacking off of what Riley said, specifically acknowledging the fact that students learn differently and that students have different strengths and they have their individuality and their uniqueness. So excellence to me is giving them that opportunity to be the best versions of themselves every day, whether it's through the experiences in the classroom, like Raquel said, fostering those relationships. I have been in the district for 23 years, and I still keep in touch with students. One of them lives around the corner from me, and I see and I see her with her twins, and she still, says how much she learned, from me in high school. And like Raquel said, not necessarily in AP honors, even some that were not post-secondary college bound. So to me, that is excellence, recognizing that there is individuality with them, and it's not defined, like Riley said, solely on grades and solely on, what happens, pleasing parents and taking AP courses, getting straight A's, things like that, that it's really based on what they want to accomplish in their days. I think that's really valid.
I think Regla wanted to contribute. Thanks.
Okay, so following, just similar to what Riley and Raquel and Jessica said, excellence in a world language in the world language department would be students just putting forward their best effort to independent to their level, their skill level. Students come to us, depending on the level with different skills. We measure the 4 language modalities, and just putting forward their best effort to try to improve, whether that's in writing, reading, listening, or speaking. And also just caring about different cultures and different traditions, and just having that sense of exploration and investigation as to how the rest of the world lives, not just so much in our community, but across the world. And that would be a sign of excellence in the world language department.
Thank you. Someone else?
Talk.
Okay, Rachel.
So just to, am I close enough to the mic? Just to give, I guess, another perspective too, I agree with what everybody's already said about individuality and relationships and kind of all of that. But I think another important thing that I try to consider when thinking about excellence is kind of the messiness of excellence, right? I think there's this very romanticized version of excellence that it means perfection. And I see a lot of students struggle with that, where if they're not perfect in every kind of aspect of their day or every element of their life, whatever that means to them, individually, they have a very hard time pushing through. So really fostering an understanding for students that perfection is messy, right? And excellence is messy, and we're not going to be perfect at everything, but building the capacity for grit and perseverance and how that can get us to success, whatever that means for that student, right? And modeling that for students too in ways that we, if we have a lesson that doesn't really work well, and how can we kind of work through that process of fixing it or, making it a little bit better, and that it's okay if I messed up one day, right? And that's going to get me to what I see as excellence, right, is being able to push through and overcome and persevere. So I think that, moving away from that romanticized version of excellence being perfection is really what true excellence is, right? That you can see it for really what it is and how it actually impacts your life.
Sarah, did you want to jump in?
No, I agree with what everybody has said. At this point, I think kind of going off of what Rachel said, I think one thing that really speaks to me is getting students excited about learning. And I think that in order to do that, we need to make sure that we do embrace the messiness. So I teach English, and I always say, right, writing is a really messy process. It does not need to be perfect on your first, second, or third draft. Let's just keep going. And I really think that that's a lot like the student experience, right? They need to make sure they understand themselves as learners. I think that really shows excellence, as well as understand that there are going to be places that they may excel in and other places that they may need to work a little bit harder. And both of those things are okay and show growth and show excellence. So it's really getting, especially at the secondary, students to see that and see that in themselves, and how both of those things really show who they are as lifelong learners.
Rachel, you want to add?
I think, Sarah and I have a unique perspective, being that we teach 7th and 8th grade, which is really the start of the kind of honors levels in the district. And, so I think there's a beauty in failure that we see a different side of, because there is that pressure and that change or that shift from just being in 6th grade or 7th grade to now being in 8th grade honors or 7th grade accelerated. And so there's more of a push for that perfection, right? Or meeting that expectation when maybe that's not necessarily where the focus should be. So the beauty of failure, I think, is really important in kind of highlighting that at this stage especially.
I'm thinking this might be a good transition to the second question. Considering our district's vision and mission, what are some of the exemplary learning experiences? You've alluded to some of those already, or approaches that you and your colleagues or you as students have experienced that foster those desired skills that we've been talking about. Jane, you want to hear about your book?
I guess we'd like to hear about your book. We'll talk about that too. So representing the high school art department, the fine arts department, and the graphics department. We take our students on field trips. Recently, we took our students to the 30 Americans exhibit in Connecticut, and the students had an experience with a powerful artwork that was featured by many influential Black artists in the last 4 decades. It was a very, very fantastic trip for our students. Our advanced computer graphics goes on a walking field trip in the springtime to downtown New Rochelle to see the street art, and this links to a unit of study on street art and street artists. And the students are able to experience the size and the scale of the street art in person. We have numerous guest speakers, such as Lady Pink, who joined our advanced computer graphics class last spring. Mr. Berkowitz joined us for that Google Meet. And she explained her journey and showed her art in our studio, and she gave our students time to ask personalized questions. Lady Pink, just so you all know, is a world-famous contemporary artist, and she has pieces in the permanent collection at the Met. She's a fantastic guest speaker. We also had Atomic, whose real name is Adam Vargas, and he also joined our advanced computer graphics class by Google Meet. And he too explained his process and showed his art in his studio. He's well known in the Miami area for his orange character. And he spoke to the students about his own struggles in high school and what it was like to come to terms with them, that art was more of his focus than school. We, as a department, have Halloween window painting. This is a real-world experience for our advanced artists and AP artists. And the students create small sketches and enlarge them to paint on the windows, and this is seen and enjoyed by the entire Pelham community. We celebrate Pelham's Juneteenth, creating an art walk event. We have our annual high school art exhibit where students learn to create and display works of art in a meaningful way. We have our Cantona Museum Art Show, very similar to our own art show, just more widespread. We have students who've had work exhibited in the Museum of Contemporary Art in Westport twice in 2020, and we'll have more in 2022. We have the Pelham Art Center Salon. This is a group that features a range of media from over 100 young artists in advanced and AP art from local high schools, including ours. And of course, the Pelican Yearbook Awards. The 2021 Pelican Yearbook was awarded 3 prizes from the American Scholastic Press Association. First place, Best Use of Color and Best Photography. The 2021 Pelican Yearbook was also included in Best of Herff Jones Anthology. This book was created during the highlight of the pandemic with 2 new faculty advisors, and it focuses on student life, not on the pandemic. The 2023 Pelican Yearbook staff won the grand prize for the October 2022 Sales Blitz. 2 student editors will attend the Yearbook Palooza this coming summer, with all expenses paid. Classes are offered for yearbook student staff and student editors and returning advisors, and a variety of classes at this Yearbook Palooza will cover writing, theme, coverage, design, marketing, and photography and e-design and more. And the high school art teachers are very, very proud of their students and their accomplishments.
Thank you, Jane.
I know.
Yeah. You know, and I have to say what you hit on there, and I think it's worth, in addition to all the accolades for art, we saw the biggest accomplishments for Pelham Memorial High School across the board in a variety of disciplines during the height of the pandemic. I don't want that point to be lost, because you're exactly right. Thank you for sharing those
Thank you.
amazing works coming from our students. Other sharing of different activities that are giving, and learning experiences that are giving our students that are helping us meet our vision. Lynn?
Well, that was certainly a palooza right there, Ms. Walls.
She's gonna, and you don't have to go through the whole tree list of accolades.
No, I'm not going through our
I know your
tree.
competitive nature.
No, I'm not. You know, building on what everybody said, excellence and how we provide excellence is really ensuring that every child has a seat at the table. And not just that there's a seat for them, but we want them to be at the table, and we have a chair for you, and we're going to move that chair up, and we want your voice, and we want to provide opportunities for student voice and agency through our clubs, our ambassador programs, our climate surveys. We do them 4 times a year. Our activities, our trusted adults, our continued work in character education. Our teachers provide classroom experiences that allow students to experience explicit and implicit teachable moments. Increasing our students' capacity to link civil dialogue, critical thinking, conversations on social issues, healthy interpersonal relationships. And you know, that's kind of been a theme, personal relationships throughout our elementary colleagues, our middle school, our high school. If students don't know you care about them, they don't care about what you know. And if they don't feel like they can come into a building that's safe and that really cares about them, they're not going to be successful. And I think that, you know, in middle school years, I mean, the transition between 6th, 7th, and 8th graders it's probably the biggest time, the most transition in a child's life, except from like birth to 2 years old. You know, I always tell the parents, put your seatbelts on. You are in for a ride. And it's the truth. And it is messy, and we want children to learn from their mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. We want them to learn from their mistakes and continue to build that capacity and that grit and stay with it and be determined. And you may not be successful the first time or the second time or the third time, but you know, you are going to be successful. So I think that's really, for me, you know, as a building leader and watching my teachers and my students, I really do feel Pelham Middle School is the greatest school on earth, and I've said that from the time I've been here. And it's really the environment we provide for our students, and that's the key. Meeting every student where they are and helping them become their best self, whatever that is. Whether it's going on to, after high school, Harvard, Yale, going to the workforce, going into the military, whatever it is for each child. And making them feel they're special. They don't have to go to Harvard or Yale to be special. They have to do their best work and be their best selves. And that's what it's all about for us.
Mr. Berkowitz?
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Sabia, and thank you going back to Riley and Lucas and to our students and to our faculty. I think there's been a lot of themes, and among the things I want to talk about where you're talking about what happens is to have veteran teachers working together because there is a tradition and it is informed. You saw Scott Brown from the middle school talking about Pelham Pride, and that actually matters, just to go back to that preparation, respect, involvement, determination, excellence. One of the things we've done at the high school level this year is to bring back the Scholars of the Month program and to actually ask for our colleagues to shout out students based upon one or more of those attributes. And it's not about GPA traditionally defined, although we do have students who are getting awards for that reason, but it is about seeing a student who's arriving ready to learn, and let's shout them out. Or it is about someone who's felt like they're overcoming an obstacle and their teacher saw them overcoming an obstacle. Raquel was just telling me that she'd sent, on her own, a shout out to a parent and to the child who had won our November Scholars of the Month. And that kind of, I see you working hard moment matters. And it matters to bring up Scott because as with board members, as with community members sitting here, as with faculty, he's a graduate of Pelham Memorial High School. That through line to come from our caretaking K-5 community, to come into the high school, to the middle school, where Ms. Sabia and team have for years talked about the Pelham Pride acronym, and to have us say at the high school level, we are continuing a through line that has been built up, and preparation, respect, and involvement, and determination, for me is the biggest one, will lead you to excellence. Yes, a level of success, but also a standard of excellence. It's very exciting to have that. And I will just leave with one more anecdote, because the Lady Pink, talking about messy habits, this one visit from an artist who was talking about her process, incredible question, I'll never forget. Student poses a question to her and says, how do you know when you're done with a painting? This was remarkable. because these are students who care about craft. They want to arrive at the standard of excellence. She actually had a fabulous answer. She had two responses that I'm going to repeat here. First one is, I know that I'm done when I run out of paint, and she meant it. Like, if I'm done with supplies, it's over. The second one is, if my handlers or a partner or husband, or I think she had said that word, forgive me, like, meaning like I don't remember who it was, but I thought it was in a relationship, says like, it's time to go. But the most important part that I want to talk about for excellence was she said, at some point you have to acknowledge you're done. Then you take a photo of your work, at least that's what she does, and then I'm truly done. Once I've taken the photo of the finished work, it's over. And I share that because for a lot of our students, I would even say for us as faculty, we can't stop. We want to just keep going to make sure it's better and better and better. And there is a point, going back to balance, where you have to say, I've arrived at standard, and now this is done, and I'm going to go on to the next task. And I think that that's also an important part of talking about arriving at a standard of excellence. And she talked about it in a way that was part of her craft. And thank you, Ms. Wells, for setting up an amazing experience for us all.
So I'm going to use Mr. Berkowitz's statement to transition us to the last question, being respectful of everyone's time tonight. How do you maintain those high expectations and balance them with student mental health, emotional wellness, and readiness to learn? And if they don't mind being put on the spot again, I think I'm going to start us back up here on this end with our students and their thoughts on balancing high expectations that you and yourselves, that you bring with yourselves and your families bring. How do you balance that with, how do students balance that with their mental health and well-being?
Honestly, I think after COVID, balancing things, well, during COVID was really easy. You know, being able to do schoolwork and doing things from home were really easy. And coming back, everything, you know, became a lot harder. And I think a lot of kids are going through that period where it's like, okay, we have to learn how to get back to where we were. But I don't think that should be the expectation. I think that we went through a really terrible thing, you know, an awful thing. And, you know, not all things in COVID were bad, but a lot of them were. And, you know, schools are the hardest thing to get through, you know, and I don't think we're ever going to be back to the way that we learned before COVID. And I don't think that should be the goal. I think the goal needs to be, how do we move forward from it? And how do we find the best way for them to succeed from that point, where the point that we left off, you know? And COVID was, you know, limbo. You know, it was really hard to learn. It was really hard to teach. And the only way to move forward to our next step is by figuring out what we know and what we have to do. So I think the balance is really just learning how to come back into school and just get through the day. You know, the first day back after getting, like, from COVID was probably, like, one of the weirdest experiences, you know, because I have a brother and a sister who both went through this school. So I know everyone. I've always known everyone. And getting back, you know, it felt like you felt a little bit alone. And I think, you know, this school has really tried to show that, like, we're together, and that's really important. And I think we need to continue doing that, especially for, you know, the freshmen coming to our school, because they came from middle school. Middle school is such a developmental time in a child's life, because that's what you get to high school, and you just got to hit the ground running. You got to really, like, work on yourself and find what you love. And I think we need to I think it's really important to try and help them so then they can help the kids under them. Because, you know, we're the future, and we want to succeed, but it's not easy to succeed when we don't know how we're going to move forward after learning with COVID and now trying to get back to before. I think the expectation should be moving forward, and the expectation needs to be, what can students do what can teachers do that will make students want to come into school and be so excited to learn? And that's probably one of the hardest things to do. I mean, the most difficult things to do, but I think making the school a really safe environment where people can feel that they can express themselves and they can feel really excited to come into school is the best way to show that, is the best way to allow us to want it. And wanting it is, like, the best part of school. My freshman year was when I found what I wanted in life. You know, I found psychology as what I wanted. And right from that point, you know, everything made sense. I was so excited to come to school every day and go to my sociology class and work so hard because I knew that if I did that, my future is going to be so much better. And I don't think that every kid looks at school and thinks that. And I think that that needs to be really expressed, that you want to do the best that you can here, so for your future, you can be happy and you can reach the goals that you have for yourself.
Thank you. Lucas?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that finding your own sense of purpose is obviously essential to building character and just knowing what you want to do in life. For me, I mean, I have track and I lift weights, and I think that, as I said before, this provides a nice reset so I can go back in school and be able to excel and do what I need to do within school. But I think that these sort of escapes or these sort of mechanisms of releasing this distress is imperative. And I think that these breaks need to be implemented or readily accessible in school so students can release this distress and so that their mental health is taken care of and so that they can get back and be able to excel and reach the standards that they need to.
Thank you. I'm going to toss it down to Mr. Farrell. I haven't had a chance to bring him into the conversation, but this is his.
So
his
for
realm.
me, a lot of what the theme I've heard a lot about is meeting students where they are. And I think that's the theme from my perspective as a school counselor also. It's meeting students where they are, academically and social emotionally as well too. So academically, we have work always to do for students and finding out where they are, especially I'm looking at Ms. Rodriguez for math, as we discussed where kids are in math and some maybe even the world languages where it's very skill-based, but everybody. So that academic piece is we still work through and finding where students are post-COVID as we look through it. But connecting kids and social emotional piece is really, really a big part of what I think is important. So when I talk about connecting, I hear about all the programs that are out there, right? And I think about like the art programs and the yearbook and all these great and it's really exciting. And we didn't say science research, and we did not say the theater program too. So, but getting students reconnected is so valuable in getting them back to where they are. And also I heard some really great ones as we were starting to do this, the Dungeons and Dragon Club, the gaming clubs, things like that. So when students feel that way, I think that those excellent pieces, those different things that are going on throughout the district, it makes me feel comfortable when those students are getting connected. But I think from our role and what we do, we developed capacity with the new social workers, with MTSS work, finding what gaps, what's going on with the students, and if you're ever in a room, which is really terrific, to listen to the brainstorming go on as we try to problem solve some of the things that students might need. And now we have a capacity to look at outside resources. We always are looking at what inside resources we are. I had discussions with Ms. Connolly today. I'm like, do you think you could help out? She's the bridge coordinator. Having all those different, having the capacity to connect students to academic and social emotional needs, whatever they are, inside or outside of the school, is a big part of what the excellence is in supporting the social emotional piece.
Great. I think in the interest of time, I know that I could tell people have things to say, but I also want our board to have an opportunity to talk and interact before it gets too much later. And again, I'm looking at some professionals and some students that need to get some sleep between today and tomorrow. I know we didn't get to go nearly deep enough into that question, but I do want to offer an opportunity to the Board of Education. You've heard a lot in the last hour and a half from our secondary team. Thank you so much. Some of our elementary folks were able to stay as well. I'd open it up to you to see, do you have any questions or thoughts that you would like to delve a little deeper into with the group tonight?
I just want to say so much to think about and so much consistency across, I think everything that we heard, and I think it's incredible to see the transition from elementary to middle to high school and how much thought is going into that, right? And I really appreciate that kind of stepping back and having two kids who have gone through the whole system and seeing how much connective tissue there is between, from K all the way through to 12. So really, really appreciate that. Love hearing all the themes and so much to think about. Thank you.
I just wanted to thank Dr. Champ for spearheading this whole initiative, because I think that we've lost a real sense of connection to one another and the community, and within and outside of the school walls, to me, has felt very fragmented. And I think this is a really beautiful way to bring people back together and to accomplish, as you said, what we've been trying to do, which is to get people in a room talking, and understanding each other. And knowing that we all come at some of these topics from a different viewpoint, but with all the same goals in mind. I'm also struck by having facilitated one of the sessions last Monday, and I know the questions were related but a little different because we were talking to parents, but just how the discussion was similar but also very different from a parent perspective. So how do we continue these discussions from a community outreach perspective and try and bring people together so that they can understand, what the viewpoint is outside of school and what the viewpoint is within school, and merge those together, because we are all partners.
I'll echo just my thanks. The breadth of and expertise in this room is really inspiring, so thank you. And something that I thought was really interesting, Ms. Sabia, you said, because one of the things that is so interesting is how much you also just keep a pulse on what is happening in schools. So you have a sense of, do we have a common definition of excellence? And you said you have a climate survey 4 times a year. That sounds amazing. I'm wondering, A, is that something that's done across the board? And how does that process work in terms of getting you the kind of feedback loop to continue to strengthen culture and climate?
So actually, our faculty meeting today focused on call to action based on our climate survey. We asked the same questions to our students, and then we gave open-ended responses. And so we take a look at that data, we process it, we meet with the faculty, we share the data. We had some brainstorming where the faculty would look at what some of the data points are and are there things that we could do different and better. And then Mr. Llewellyn and I will look at that with our PPS staff. And then we will look at the programs we have and evaluate those programs and what do we need to do different in addition to meet the needs of the students.
And does that exist elsewhere in the district, that kind of process?
I don't know. I don't want to speak for any of my colleagues.
We've certainly used surveys in the past, but I think that we're trying to, we're going to actually be doing something somewhat similar, I think, with some of our ADL work that's moving forward, because like the middle school, the high school's in a fledgling state of exploring the No Place for Hate process, which climate surveys are very important. My particular experience, not to take away from the middle school's 4 model, would be probably to move towards twice a year, the spring and the fall. Fall is a baseline in the spring for, kind of monitor and revision, and let the spring inform the following fall's planning, so on and so forth. So for me, the sweet spot will be 2 times per year, but we're still trying to kind of move towards that.
Yeah, let me just correct too. When I said 4 times, it's two times for the students and 2 times for the faculty, giving it 4.
Got it. Awesome.
I have to also just shout out, and not to speak twice, but I'm so impressed by our students. And I'm so glad that we have students here speaking for themselves, because sometimes it feels like there's a lot of adults in the room talking about you guys, and I know you have a lot to say. So thanks for coming and for being so honest.
Bill?
Thanks. This has been fascinating and enlightening, and I thank you for your time and for your insights. And Ms. Sabia, I completely agree that well, all the schools are fantastic, but I have particular experience with the middle school, and I think it's outstanding. And I also agree with what you said about, strongly agree with what you said about how each student, what success looks like to them can be very different. And sort of the role of the schools is to identify what it is that a child or a student may be interested in, what motivates them, and then encourage them and give them like a shove in the back to be as good at that thing or those things as they could possibly be, whether that's academic, artistic, athletic, social, whatever that thing may be. So I agree with that approach. But also as a parent, you know, we kind of look at our kids' performance sometimes. We don't, even though our students come home, we don't have necessarily as much insight into their sort of day-to-day as perhaps the educators do. And part of how, as a parent, we kind of evaluate our kids' performance is through the sort of fairly narrow aperture of test scores and quantitative measurement. And so I guess, you know, from your position, how would you advise parents to kind of ingest test scores? What emphasis should we put on them? Put yourself in my shoes. And while I completely agree with many of the definitions of excellence that have been put forward tonight, test scores do exist. And so what is your sort of thought about how a parent might want to, like I say, react to or take test scores into account as they're sort of thinking about their students' development?
So, you know, I mean, that's a great question. And I think in the middle school, we do a lot of talking with parents and helping parents understand, yes, rigor is important, test scores are important, however, it's a small piece. So, you know, parents were always saying they were so concerned about learning loss during the pandemic, and I said, look, I'm not as worried about learning loss as I am about social emotional loss, because, you know, we'll get our students caught up. I really believe that. Our teachers are great. We have after-school programs, civic-sponsored programs, tutoring. We're going to get our students where they need to be academically. It was the social piece that I was more concerned about. And in our team meetings, our teachers share, you know, what the strengths are of that individual child that they see throughout the entire course of the day. And yes, academics is one piece, but you know, I've spoken to so many parents that, you know, the students will come into the office and they come in for all different kinds of things. And just the other day I had a conversation with a student who got an 85 on his test, and he was crying because he didn't want to tell his dad he got an 85. So, you know, we spent some time talking, and I called the parent and said, you know, your son got an 85 in the exam. We think he did really well. He worked really hard. He felt really prepared, but he's concerned about your response. So, you know, let's talk about where you think he should be, and let's talk about where the child is and the effect of him not wanting to go home and share that test score and the anxiety he'd feel. So, you know, we reach out individually to parents, our counselors, our social workers. Our team meetings, I think, are geared toward that. We're happy that we're able to have so many more team meetings again this year. And I think helping parents understand the whole continuum of the middle school child, and understanding that, yeah, test score is one piece of it, and then trusting our teachers. They're going to get our kids, our students, to where they need to be. They're going to continue to work and grow, and we hand them off to the high school, and we're confident that they're going to get what they need there. We get them from the elementary school, confident they're ready for us. So, you know, trusting in the teachers as well, knowing that, you know, a test score is just that. It's a snapshot in time. It doesn't define who your child is, and we can continue to grow and learn from those.
May I add? I also think that what Ms. Sabia emphasized there is the communication piece. So when it comes to standardized tests and, you know, even the larger local examinations that we have at the secondary level, if there are questions or concerns, you know, the first step is to talk with the educator and ask the educator what were the skills that the student demonstrated great proficiency or excellence in, and what were the skills that there were some weaknesses. But beyond that, what are you seeing in the classroom that is either supporting what happened on this assessment, or is this assessment just a blip? Because that happens, especially at the middle school and high school, where you know, there's a definite awareness that some of the assessments we give may not be as important. I'm just going to use Ames Web. Right? And we will have sometimes an 8th grader not put their best effort in because they don't see the value in that assessment. And then when the scores don't come back where they should be, as a parent, I would definitely be worried or concerned if I had that conversation. But understanding that that one day, at that one moment, may not be the demonstration of their ability. And it's the educators that can have those conversations with parents. So it's reaching out to the schools and talking with the educators, I think, is a very, very important step.
Okay. Any final questions or thoughts from the board? Yeah, Jackie?
I just want to thank everyone for the very impressive discussion. And I have one question. I think it was in the elementary panel, we talked about wanting to have more time. They said more time to be present. Are there other things that you would like to have more time for?
More hours in the day would be wonderful.
If I could stop, I think.
Yeah, Regla, I think you were looking to share.
Well, we were talking in the World Language Department that, we just need time sometimes to just revisit what we do. We find that it's a lot of rushing through, covering material, getting the students where they need to be, but then sometimes we don't have time amongst us to just say, hey, how did that lesson go? Or even just share ideas with one another. Many times I could hear of a colleague who did a project in their class, and I was like, wow, that's a great project. I could incorporate that in one of my levels. Or just time also to collaborate with other departments. I've sometimes have had ideas of, the English is reading House on Mango Street, and in my super class we come across, some information about Sandra Cisneros, and maybe we want to share or collaborate and do a project that we could work together, but we don't have time during the day to. I don't even see Jessica, who's right next door, unless she just comes into the bathroom in the world. So sometimes we just need time for that, and I think what we do, we're doing well, and we do a great job, and sometimes it's just tweaking a little bit what we do.
Great, thank you. Any other thoughts on time? Okay. Riley's got another contribution for us tonight.
I think that for kids, I'm a student who I get double extra time because I am extremely slow at just doing work. I mean, I do work really well, and because I want my work to be done well, I take a lot of time. And also other reasons, but I think a lot of the time some students feel that they don't have enough time to get their work done and do it well and do it in a way that they can feel confident in giving it in, with maybe quizzes and tests. And I know a lot of students who feel that they could do a lot better if they had, an extra 10 minutes, or if they had, some time to speak with a teacher in private to talk about, there's a lot of struggles that they go through, and giving students the time to speak, I think, is just so important. And I don't think a lot of people feel confident to do that. And a lot of kids, they're not going to step up and say, I can speak on the board, and I can go after and talk to a teacher. Sometimes that's not always facilitated, that they feel comfortable talking to like a teacher about a test grade or going after school. And while it's an option, I think that teachers need to really make sure that students know that it's a completely safe space. And I've learned that through my brother and sister and through just knowing my teachers on a personal level. And I always thought that was a really important thing to me, because I wanted to be able to walk into a teacher and be like, what, today I took that test and, it was a really bad day. I was going through a lot that day, and I'll be able to talk to them, and maybe they'll be able to give me more insight on just how to do well on the next one and how I can improve myself going forward. And I think that has to be really shown and displayed to all of our students. I'm a student. Shown to everyone that, it's okay to talk and to be loud and to be yourself with all of the teachers and staff and in our school. And I also think that starts with our environment. You know, a lot of kids, you know, see on the news, you know, the terrible things that have been happening in schools, you know, and, you know, it makes it really scary sometimes coming to school. And after COVID and after, you know, not getting that time to really know your teachers, you know, when I came in, I didn't know any of my teachers until I walked into the room. I mean, I knew them, but most of my classmates didn't. So I think just making sure that everyone knows they have a voice and they can use it no matter what. And no matter what they have to say. Because, you know, sometimes students can be upset and angry and still want to be able to say that to their teacher and be like, you know what? I didn't feel like I knew what was on this test, you know? Like, I talked to my teacher the other day about how, you know, I was really angry with him about, you know, some part of this test. And, you know, I still went after school and spoke to him about, you know, I just wasn't ready and I didn't feel ready. And we had, you know, a very good conversation that left me really happy, but I don't think kids know that that's all right and that you can come in with anger and with all your emotions and have this be a really safe environment for all of your feelings. And I think that it should also be something that's taught, something that you should learn that, like, you're allowed to speak.
You've all given us a tremendous amount to think about tonight. I just want to wrap things up quickly because I want to let folks get on with the rest of their evening. Thank you for the thoughtful conversation. And I know all these conversations can happen, but the question is, what do we do with it all? So certainly, you know, we'll be doing more unpacking of this with the board. You know, as a result of what I've heard coming into this conversation, paired with what we're hearing tonight, just a few things already that I have in my mind. Certainly doing more to continue to communicate about student progress and the outstanding work of the professionals in our school environment. Broadening discussions about what does evidence of learning look like, so there's ways that parents can better understand that broad spectrum of how their children are doing. Prioritizing planning time, consistency of teaching assignments, co-teaching. As we approach master scheduling for the year, there's always challenges. It'll never be perfect, but knowing how important those pieces are, we can put those at the forefront of our thinking. Focusing on our existing initiatives and considering additional supports for staff and students, those that have been mentioned tonight and throughout the course of the fall. And as the board, I know we may, I don't know if we want to come back to this another time.
Yeah.
But in our few upcoming conversations, certainly we're heading into the budget season. So things like stewardship and support, we'll be considering those things. The board will be debating some of that. And we'll be having follow-up conversations on what kind of assistance and support and direction can the board provide, knowing everything that's been shared tonight. So once we have those conversations, I'm going through the rest of the cycle for those who lost track of the inquiry cycle. That's the design, and then we're going to apply. If anything's built into the budget, we'll be looking to apply. And that's part, I think a lot of that's planning as well as potentially supports for the next budget year. Those will come online next year. And then just a reminder for everyone, next year is the start of our next strategic planning cycle. So the information tonight, the recentering conversations that we're having this year, this is a great entree to start to get the direction for the future set. So that work will begin next year, as well as a new tri-state cycle where we may be looking at our vision and mission further as we look to refresh that in the years to come. I want to thank everybody for your incredible time tonight. I know we ran over. Thank you for your patience. Jessica, I hope your child is still okay when you get home. I hope your house is still in one piece. But thank you for your wisdom. Thank you, elementary team. Thank you, administrators who came out in support of their teachers and for one another. Thank you for sharing everything and your time tonight. Round of applause for everyone. And then we're going to take a 5-minute break to let you all get on your way for the evening. Okay. Thank you. You're officially dismissed. We'll take a 5-minute break. We let folks go and we can. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you to everybody. That was an excellent work session. Our next item is communications and comments from the public. So if you'd like to, yeah. Welcome, and if you could just say your name and address, thank you.
Yeah, feel free to move the table out of the way, too. Thank you.
It's fine, thank you. I prefer the distraction. Thank you, it's perfect. Good evening. My name is Gina Ryan, 1078 Washington Avenue. I am a mother of 4, 3 who have already graduated and 1 in the high school. We have been in the Pelham schools for over 20 years now. I am speaking tonight because I have serious concerns about the way our high school handles disciplinary matters. I have recently experienced that when a student breaks the rules, even nonviolent ones, a single school administrator can become not only the accuser and questioner, but essentially the judge, jury, and even the executioner. If a suspension is in excess of 5 days is possible, a superintendent's hearing is called. This was expressed to me as just a formality. Parents are informed that they can bring a lawyer to the hearing, but I initially thought that wouldn't be necessary because I believed that the school would be fair and have the student's best interest in mind. Sadly, as I spoke to many parents and learned of how previous matters had been handled, I realized I was wrong. The school could potentially blindside me and seek an outrageously long-term suspension of up to 6 months. I discovered firsthand that they could arbitrarily decide whatever punishment they saw fit, and despite a superintendent's hearing, once the original knee-jerk, judgmental, and not fully informed opinion by that initial administrator has been made, it allows for great bias in the process and an unwillingness to meaningfully consider any evidence presented as to the student as a whole. This is an alarming and disturbing pattern that is happening repeatedly in our high school, with punishments being arbitrarily handed out that are completely disproportionate to the infraction in what could only be described as a kangaroo court. If at the hearing an unfair sentence is imposed, the next step would be to appeal, but that is to the same people who decided the punishment in the first place. How is that fair or just? The next step would be the Supreme Court, which would take 6 months, all the while the student cannot return to school. The process is completely absurd to me, with the district having no one to keep them in check. I am asking, at minimum, for our school district to have a policy to bring in an independent, unbiased party for evaluating and determining long-term suspensions, especially during the appeals process. Additionally, our high school chooses to participate in the practice of questioning a minor without a parent present, a child who may be nervous, afraid, and not know that they can request their parent. This practice is completely unacceptable to me, and I suspect most parents would agree, especially when considering that the one doing the questioning will then be the one to make recommendations as to the disciplinary action based on their initial judgment. This is even more egregious when questioning a child who has an IEP. By the time parents are called after an incident, sometimes several hours later, the student has already gone through the questioning process, which quite frankly can be traumatizing and done with no regard for their well-being. It is disturbing on many levels. While they are not legally required to have a type of Miranda rights read to them, a student's respect for the adults in charge should not be used against them in questioning and making them feel like a delinquent who isn't entitled to have someone supporting them. Parents need to be aware that the school can question their children without consent, and it can be used against them depending on the administrator's narrative and/or agenda to make an example of them. I implore the board to take a serious look at the unchecked and unjust way our district reacts to and handles disciplinary matters, including protocols regarding questioning, punishment decisions, and the appeals process, and to make the necessary changes. I also ask for a transparency or disclosure policy about the punishment that will be sought prior to a student superintendent's hearing, instead of blindsiding them with extremely long suspensions, so that they can make an informed decision as to whether or not they should bring a lawyer. Anything less comes across as sneaky and deceitful. To wrap things up, teenagers make mistakes, but the consequences need to be fair. To remove a child from school who is not a threat to the safety of others for a great length of time significantly harms them academically and social-emotionally. Punishment for the sake of making an example of a student is wrong, as these kids are at their most vulnerable during these times. Instead, the approach should revolve around supporting the child to learn from their mistake. The district should act like caring, supportive adults rather than a warden. Counseling, community service, and wellness checks should be used rather than banishing a child from the school, district property, and events, which are the primary source of support and community for these kids. It does not appear that our school district is supportive of some students when they make mistakes, even when they take full responsibility for their actions. That is heartbreaking. I know my trust and faith in our district has been broken. Our district needs to do better. Better, more fair protocols need to be put in place to make sure that students who get in trouble can meaningfully learn from their mistakes and grow. I ask that you please look into disciplinary protocols, not just from a legal standpoint, but based on what is in the best interest of our children. I wanted to keep this as short as possible, even though I have more to say. I will be sending a copy of this to the board and would be happy to speak with any board members further. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your concerns. And I know we all take them very seriously. We did do a board training recently to kind of look into some of these issues, and it's something we can consider further in our policy committee. So thank you for sending it to us so we can read in detail what you said.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Okay, thank you. I think let's go to item 6.7, which is sense of the Board of Education discussion on the great work of our fundraising for the weight room.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come. We had the privilege of meeting with the Facilities Committee, I think it was a couple around Thanksgiving timeframe, and walked through the Friends of Pelham Sports initiative that we are looking to undertake, where we would like to fundraise to help refurbish part of the internal space here for a health and fitness and wellness center for the students, the student body. I have with me Joe Salamini, who is the chairman and president of Friends of Pelham Sports and founder, and John Boyce, who is on a lot of various Pelham committees, and we'll probably have to introduce some of those, but he's a very active member of our community, as well as the sports and football communities. So with that, what we thought we would do is just share with you a little bit about Friends of Pelham Sports, their background, some of the success they've had, as well as John will talk through how the vision came, and then we'll share with you where we are. We're ready to launch and our ask of support from the board. So with that, I'll turn it over to Joe first.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me? Is this mic live? Great. I don't think she said it. That's Stephanie McGovern. So great job, Stephanie. Yeah, I'm Joe Salamini Jr. I want to thank you all for having us come in tonight. I am the president of Friends of Pelham Sports. That's a forgotten 501c3 in Pelham. It was formed, and there's Sue Childs. She was on our board. It was formed in 2010-ish to build the turf field down at Glover, the football field. And it took us about 3 years to raise about $1.3 million in funds. And we did it, basically nickel and dimed our way all the way up to that $1.3 million number. It took us 3 years. Very difficult. No social media at the time, all done via email and spreadsheets, and Sue's nodding her head. It was a challenge. It was not easy to raise that money. And when we just built the turf fields down there and our taxes paid for it, I'm just not sure how I felt about that when we didn't have to raise the money for that, but I'm just kidding.
Slightly conflicted.
Right. But we did a great job. We had formed a wonderful board. We had about 12 to 15 people on that board. It is, like I said, a 501c3. It's been dormant for the last 9 years, waiting for the right project to come along. By the way, Friends of Pelham Sports raises money, and we're very focused on what we will do. We raise money for athletics and recreation in town. That's our mission. And we've been hanging around waiting for the right project. John Boyce and Frank Reese came to me about 9 months ago and said, it's time. We've been in other school districts, and our fitness facilities in Pelham are lacking, and we need to address this. And quite frankly, I graduated in 1984, and they pretty much look like they did in 1984. And Sue, you graduated in 1985, and For not, again, nodding, thank you for agreeing with me, Sue. Appreciate the support tonight. So it is time to upgrade that facility. We did go out and look at several options in town. We looked at the Glover Fieldhouse. We looked at some other buildings in town. Pelham, as we know, is very land poor. There aren't many options. And then on a whim, we took a look at the existing rooms in the high school. And we said, there's a lot of square footage here, and we could do something here. And I'm going to kick it over to John in a second to tell you about what our plans are for the existing fitness rooms. But we feel like this is a great project. I said that when we formed Friends of Pelham Sports, we had about 12 to 15 board members who raised that money over 3 years. We weren't going to do that again. So what we did is we went out and formed a committee of about 45 very capable people in town with energy. And this committee is ready to go. So when you give this approval to us, we are going to go out and raise this money. We think it's probably in the $800,000-900,000 range, but I will tell you that we have an amazing committee built that's ready to go out and raise the money. It's our hope that once this project is done, that Friends of Pelham Sports takes on a different role where we continue to fundraise in this town, again, for athletics and recreation, in the same way that Pelham Education Foundation does for academics. So that is our long-term plan, but let's get through this capital campaign first, make it a successful campaign, and then off to the races, and who knows what we could do in the future. But we're feeling really good about it, and I'm feeling great about the people that are ready to take over this organization because I'm ready to retire. So John, I'm going to kick it over to you.
Does that work now? Okay. So thank you for allowing us to give this presentation. But you know, to follow on what Joe said, this originally, I think the thought about this really came from the sort of competitive disadvantages that we found our student athletes to have on the fields and on the courts. When you look around other Section 1 facilities as locally as Eastchester or Scarsdale, the competitive differences in what their strength and conditioning facilities are pretty remarkable. You know, and as we looked at that and started to talk about this, and we also realized, you know, during the COVID area that this was also going to be a resource that would be able to be used by the physical education department, PE classes, and really the entire student body, right? I mean, I'm a huge believer, and I think it's true that, you know, mental health through physical health is a huge process, and it would be a huge resource for the entire student body to use. You know, location-wise, we went through a bunch of different things, and sometimes we got a little bit off course, and our eyes got a little bit, you know, bigger than the potential to fundraise as far as what we wanted, as far as a community center. But I think that was a little bit far-reaching, and to what Joe mentioned, we veered off our sort of our mission statement. But I think there's a lot of advantages to having it within the school, within school grounds. When you talk about access, you know, location, you know, security, supervision, all these different things. And it is, you know, based on that, it's just going to make it much easier. It's going to be universal access to our students, right? You don't need a student to have a gym membership or be paying out of pocket to access these things. It's really an all-access facility, and that we thought was going to be the right way. So, you know, this whole idea was hatched a few years ago, right before COVID sort of derailed it, and that approach was going to be much more of a, you know, sort of a Band-Aid approach and sort of improving the actual physical, you know, sort of weights in this. I think this vision, and I don't know if you have access to some of the pictures that Steph put together, but this vision is very much so as like a strength and conditioning facility. It's not the weight room that we grew up in, where it's a bunch of, you know, racks and weights and everything, and we want it to be applicable and flexible to various teams. Like, this is not going to be a facility for the football team or the lacrosse team or whatever it may be. We want to make sure that both our boys programs and girls programs have access and the right equipment and the right use of space for this. And we do think we can push up to about 2,500 square feet, which I think in general should really fit our needs between the three sort of, you know, locations that we've circled within the district. So within the building. So we're extremely excited to have the opportunity. We think that the time is right, the place is right, you know, and we're excited to push forward. So.
And so, if John, maybe I'll So in terms of the space, we currently, next to the blue gym in the high school, the one with the wrestling mat, a lot of the rec games are played there. On the one side, there's a facility that's mostly just cardio. And then on the other side, there's the varsity gym plus a storage room of files. That, I have to say this, it probably has Joe's and your transcripts in it. It's adjacent to it, so it would be a very, I think, a simple form of construction. So the renovation wouldn't be too excessive. It's already air conditioned, it's got sprinkler systems, to bringing it up to code, don't think would be too much. So the goal would be to raise funds to help with that construction, as well as upgrade the 1984 equipment that Joe was talking about, and add more to the cardio side too. And so I think the benefit of the way the space is configured is that, and to John's point, it's really accessible to everybody, right? So if maybe some people might be intimidated by working out with heavy weights, there's different sections to it that we're thinking about in the construct and layout to support all the various students that would be interested in using the facility, even after school as well. I think about all the students that I know of that belong to gyms. I think about the students that don't belong to gyms, and this could be something where kids are after school, during study period, whatever it might be, able hopefully to use it, or in some form of it in addition to the gym classes. So we've toured those spaces. We are working with AD Hodge. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, John? Just some of your conversations and the company that he's talking to and the schematics?
Sure, yeah. So we've had some preliminary conversations with
Page 4, if you have the presentation.
With Christian Hodge, who I really think will be a huge asset during this process. And I think about, mentioning before, the right place, right time. I'm also a big believer of the right people at the right time. And, to be honest with you, Dr. Champ, I think about you and a few years ago with the bond referendum, right? And I think a big reason why that was such a successful campaign was because you had prior experience in your prior job with a similar, referendum, raising bonds. And I think that, similarly, Christian Hodge could be a big piece of this puzzle, right? He's had prior experience in prior lives, prior jobs, building out, facilities and like this on a much bigger scale. He has contacts. He has the experience as far as laying out, understanding what the right equipment is, what the right layout is. So he's someone that we hope will be heavily involved in this process as well from a very professional perspective. And I know he shares a lot of the thoughts as far as being inclusive to the entire student body as well, not only just the varsity and various sports programs. So he did, one of the vendors did draw up a rough sort of schematic, and once he has something more from an engineer, we could go a lot farther with it. But just as sort of the vision, I know you probably can't access it right now on your phones in the email, but Stephanie will send out a cleaner version so you could take a look at it. But again, very primary or preliminary sort of look, but it's an idea of what our sort of goal is.
So where are we in the process, and why we're here? I'll talk about the process. John will talk about why we're here. We are ready to go. Don't judge me for my technical skills and my email difficulties. We had the help of AD Hodge as well as Coach Rogers in finding high school students who are in computer science, AP Computer Science, build our website, so that is ready to go. We have our donation platform all operational, and we have the committee members lined up. So we are, I think the next phase of this is just before we start to fundraise, we wanted to make sure that the space could be used for this, even just the existing space, and then the potential of the extension into the file room and help support the documentation, digitation of those files as well. So I'll turn it to John with the ask. Just permission.
You want me to ask for
Formal, yeah. The purpose of why we're here.
So I guess, yeah, on behalf of Friends of Pelham Sports, we would like to sort of, have your support so that we could go forward with this. Like we've mentioned, we've assembled a team of doers, various people in the community, especially really many people with younger students. When I think about this project, I'm extremely passionate about this project, and my kids, I'm getting older in years, and my kids are sort of out of the cycle. I have a boy that's a junior. My daughter is a sophomore. So they're not really going to receive the benefit of this, but I've always been about the sort of the community and the programs and the teams, and I look back when Joe started. I've been in Pelham for about 14, 15 years now, and we weren't really as engaged back then when you did this raise, and you're like, how is this going to benefit me and my kids, years down the road? And if I think right now, without the Glover turf, where we would be, it's a huge benefit. So this is, sort of our opportunity. I think this group and the broader committee and hopefully the community, our opportunity, our generation's sort of opportunity to sort of pay it forward and do what's right and what's needed and quite frankly, in a lot of cases, necessary to serve the student body. So we're hoping that we can get your support because we have a lot of people chomping at the bit, looking to go out and do the heavy lifting as far as raising and engaging in the community to get this project done. So.
And we'll also actively engage the student body. We have targeted some plans for January, February for the students and the various sports teams to help fundraise. So really make it just about the community and having ownership in the process.
Yeah, great point. And we fell short when we raised money in 2013. It was really just a board calling their friends, calling their neighbors, asking for people to write checks. But in addition to approving the different spaces that we've identified, we'd ask you to also approve that you will support this and push out at the elementary school level, the middle school level, and the high school level, that you will push out to the community how important it is that we as a community and a school district want this to happen. Because I will tell you, it's not easy to raise $800,000 or $900,000 from your friends. Every phone call is difficult. No one likes calling their friends for money. And that's what we're gonna have to do. We think we can do it, and we think it'll be well received, but it's going to be, you can make our job easier by pushing information out from the schools, the PTAs. We need that support to make this sell easier. It'll be a much easier lift if we do have that support.
Just to talk a little bit about the committee meeting, so thank you for being here tonight. Part of this group and another member joined the facilities committee meeting on November 15th. And so represented at that meeting was Jim, Ricky, was Cheryl. Also, Christian Hodge was on the phone. We had Mark Berkowitz representing the high school and all the committee members. So am I forgetting anyone who is present from the, yeah. So there were administrators present to have the conversation about what this means, what this would mean for the district, what kind of commitment it would take to not only use the space, but obviously keep it staffed, keep it maintained, all of that. So it seems like a fair amount of thought has been put into that. And so, Jim, I'll let you kind of speak on your take on this. But it was the recommendation of the committee that we get the full support of the board for this project.
Sure. And I don't know if you can hear me. Yeah, now you can hear me. Again, we've been personally with this committee probably going back in the discussions. We know we've been having some time, and then we've had an opportunity to walk the school, walk the spaces with the groups, with the athletic director, director of facilities as well. And I think it's an opportunity. We've spoken to our architect, KG&D, certainly asking them if they could provide additional quotes so we understand what the services would be, because this is a project that would require state approval and would need to go through that process. But as we would do this, and I think the committee's on the right track here, you want to make sure you have the input and the buy-in from your governance body to make sure that once they show up with the big check, that it's well received, that it's what the school's looking for. And I think in our meetings and what I've seen, what I've heard is certainly a commitment from this group, but certainly at the school level, an excitement about moving forward with a project such as this, and looking at those two spaces and seeing how they can be redesigned, re-envisioned, maybe you flip how they work, and at the same time as they look at it, the scaling of that project over time. So I think there's some really positive things that can come out of it. And then, of course, we would look at it as a donation coming in, which would have to be received by the Board of Education. So this is a very important step right now.
Yeah.
I mean, this is such an exciting project. You think about reflecting on the conversation that we just had, where mental health is still at the forefront of the needs of teachers and students, that this is a beautiful outcome for all students. Physical fitness is a lifetime hobby, I guess, and an important thing for us to teach our students at a young age. And for our athletes, speaking as a parent of multiple athletes, you know, my kids spend 2 days a week in off-season training in New Rochelle at another facility that we're paying for. I give the coaches a ton of credit for all the off-season training, and not saying that that wouldn't exist, but if we had some space within the school, that might be a nice thing for our sports teams. And I've seen a lot of sports injuries. I think it's pretty remarkable for falling short of other school districts in terms of our training facilities, what outcomes we've seen on the sports fields. We were doing great, but I've seen a lot of kids injured, and I think a lot of that is because they're not getting the proper conditioning. So I think if we're going to work our athletes as hard as they're worked and for as many seasons as they're going to be playing, I think it's essential that they're, you know, keeping their bodies in shape and conditioned.
I was going to piggyback off what you meant, you connecting it to the excellence conversation. I don't know if everyone heard him say it, but Lucas mentioned something about how great it would be to have a physical break during the day, dealing with all the stress of the coming out of the pandemic and trying to find a healthy balance as students. To be able to have a physical activity during the day would be really meaningful. So I definitely see it as a benefit to all students and for athletes as well in the way that you mentioned. I appreciate the fact that you all were willing to kind of be open to evolving the idea as we met. And looked at the different spaces and, worked with Jim and I and Mr. Hodge. And I appreciate, too, the recognition about the file room. One thing we don't have is space in the district, which is why we're off-site. So to come up with some creative solutions around that together, I think we appreciate you being willing to take that into account. Certainly, we know we'll be looking at some operating costs for supervision. But something that I think we all agree is meaningful and valuable to make that investment when the time comes. So I just wanted to mention those things and just really appreciate the thought, the vision, and the desire to build something in for our students that's going to be here for a long time for the next generation. Thank you.
Two quick questions. I mean, it sounds amazing. Given that it requires state approval, does that make us then eligible for state funding from elected officials like Amy Paulin, Alessandra? I know Alessandra Biaggi was trying to do something before she leaves. Like, it just seems like it doesn't all have to be philanthropy. Sounds like there should be some public funding for this.
So we have a subcommittee that's focused on grants, but we haven't gotten that far yet because we wanted to first hone in on the space, get the budget, and make sure that but yes, we definitely, and if you have suggestions or any contacts, I'd be happy to reach out to them myself to try to see what we need to do in the documentation, the grant paperwork that's required. I'd be very supportive of that and appreciate any leads.
And especially if we can tie it into curricular, anyway, we should talk offline. There's definitely significant New York State funding for phys ed.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was one point I think we failed to. Mr. Hodge did reach out to all the gym teachers and coaches to get their wish lists of the type of equipment they would need. And again, I think all the gym classes would use it, but would have even more access to more different programs and electives that they can offer, which is one thing that Mr. Hodge was excited they could offer a better conditioning elective and other things for athletes and non-athletes, which is great.
There are also companies like the Mirror and Peloton that would actually be willing to potentially, donate. So anyway, there's a lot of possibilities. So the full onus doesn't have to be on philanthropy, because isn't the Pelham Education Foundation also going to be trying to raise money to support the schools, like, to the degree that we can tap into additional sources, so you're not creating competition within Pelham.
That's a great suggestion too. Thank you. Yeah, be great to connect offline.
We did get $250,000 on that turf field project in grants. So absolutely, we're going to go down that road.
Oh, from Jeff, who gave
Jeff
that?
Klein.
Jeff Klein. Okay.
I think you mentioned you had 2 questions. Is there a second question?
The second was related. It's fine.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, my sense of the board is that we are very supportive. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we're looking forward to helping in any way we can.
Well, thank you for your time this evening, and we're very excited, and we'll be in touch soon. So good. we'll run everything through Jim, obviously, so great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
We really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Great project.
Oh, and here's, apologies, I will email out the presentation.
Okay.
On my Yahoo email. Here's a print copy, just so anyone wants that has some of the early schematics.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So back to 4.1.
Yeah. So approval of minutes, 4.1, from the business meeting of November 16th, 2022. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. 5.1 is Board of Education Committee reports, which we were going to do because we may not have another December meeting and just to keep
Correct.
everybody up to speed.
I can go through mine relatively quickly
Sure.
because we
Mhm.
covered a big chunk
Mhm.
just of
From
the
the
Facilities
facilities.
Committee. So
Mhm.
if that's all right with you guys,
Sure.
I can start. Okay. So the Facilities Committee met on November 15th, and we started with a conversation with Friends of Pelham Sports, and you have seen the result of that. So again, thank you for the support because the committee was all universally felt that this was a project that was right time, right place, right people, as they said. So glad for that support. We then went through an update on the capital bond projects. We talked about the status of Proposition 1 and Proposition 2 and the various punch lists and site work and the status of the interior renovations and Prospect Hill. So we got updates on all of those projects, and I think you have heard those updates as well at this point here because it has been a little while since we've met. So no surprises there, but we are still working through the final stages of the projects. So we will be having an update soon on the status of those projects, the wrap-up plan, and any potential money that's left over and options for that going forward, whether it end up in the debt service fund or if it could potentially be used in any other ways under the propositions as they were originally designed. So we talked through that. Then we talked about, we ran out of time at our meeting, honestly. We had a very aggressive agenda. So we did get to talk a little bit about the 15-year capital improvement plan. So really stay tuned on that. And the next stage is going to be a prioritized list of those projects so that we can start thinking in terms of budget season about what that could mean for the budget next year, and then prioritization of the projects going forward. And we talked a bit about a playground master plan. So very quick summary is that we did not get any responses to the RFP, which is too bad. But however, we have been speaking with a vendor, and by we, I mean Jim, has been speaking, and the facilities team has been speaking with a vendor about a feasibility plan for the elementary schools. And so we are trying to stay on track with that and on target time-wise, despite the fact that we didn't get RFP responses. So we do have the ability to speak to a vendor directly. So I think that pretty much is a summary of the Facilities Committee. And then the Finance Committee met this morning. We talked about the 2022-23 Q1 forecast and our current status, which overall is quite strong. I think the next update that we get from Jim will go into more detail on that. And then we also reviewed our long-range plan and budget, so the board should expect that the next step there will be sharing of that plan in the January timeframe as the kickoff to the budget season. So that will have more detail on the long-term plan, on the tax cap, on the implications of, well, first of all, on the calculation of the tax cap. The committee went through it this morning as a review, and we have a lot of detail and material on it, and that will all be shared with the board as kind of a review for, again, going into the budget season, making sure that any questions about the tax cap, implications of tax cap in an inflationary environment, state aid runs, all the things that come into play our debt payments. It's quite a complicated formula, so we'll definitely have time to go through that again. But the committee spent some time on it today. We also heard about the use of our money and our investment income update, because there are opportunities now to get interest income, as there hasn't been for quite a long time. We are taking advantage of those. And we looked very quickly at our investment policy, and I think the feeling of the committee was, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the policy does have to be approved by the board, but we are not recommending at this time that the policy committee take up a full review of this policy, because we feel that it addresses what it needs to address in this environment right now. Again, anyone who is there, correct me if I'm mistaken. Yeah, okay. And then we just got a quick capital markets advisors update, and they are our bond advisors. So they, from time to time, issue kind of statements on the state of the market. So we got just a quick summary on the state of the market and how the world has changed for bond issuance, how interest rates have changed, how going to market for these types of projects is, varies over time. And so just really just a snapshot for educational purposes on that. Oh, and then lastly, we also discussed how we ordinarily do a full line-by-line review of the budget on a Saturday, but for scheduling reasons, this year that is complicated. So the suggestion is, from the committee, is that we be flexible in our review of the budget, and that we consider moving it to evening sessions, which we've done in the past before, a couple of years ago, and not have it all on one Saturday. So obviously, it would still be open to the public. We can break it into sections. We can include it in other meetings, and the committee all felt that we were perfectly fine having that kind of flexibility and looking to the administrative team to tell us what schedule works best. But it would still be around the same early March timeframe. Right. That's it.
When you say the long-range plan in January, how long is that?
Is it 5 years? 5-year plan? Yeah.
Okay.
Current year and 4.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Do we want?
Okay. We did have a cultural competence meeting. I know technically not a board meeting, but our practice had been in the past to report out on that. So certainly Ian, Jackie, feel free to jump in. We had our first meeting of the year on November 22nd. We reviewed the charge of the committee, introductions, because there was a lot of new faces in the group, which was great. Reviewed norms, reviewed our DEI policy. We shared with the committee our progress on the cultural competence recommendations that had been offered about 18 months ago, and we took some time to see how they aligned with our strategic plan, so to see our progress on that work, what's well in hand and which work is kind of more in the beginning stages. So that was great conversation, and especially to see the overlap in those so that we know that our work is aligned. And then we spent the remainder of the meeting taking a look at climate surveys that we're looking at as we're looking to find the right tool to do a staff climate survey this year. I know in our work session, the student climate survey question came up, and I think hearing the themes of what you heard throughout the work session, that's a big piece of why we're looking for a climate one. Climate survey aligned around the belongingness and connection that we heard throughout that. So we spent some time just getting feedback on some of the different tools that we're looking at and hoping to make a decision about which direction to go with that tool prior to the holiday break. Our next meeting is the 15th.
So the climate survey is for, the proposals we looked at, it's for teachers.
Correct.
Right.
Yep. School staff, we probably would want to broaden it to all staff.
Right, and so the middle school survey, that was teachers, the middle school survey that Mrs. Sabia talked about, was that both students and faculty?
Yeah, that's one that they've developed. It's like a homegrown version, very short, but it's definitely it's one that's given, they've used for a number of years, given to students and staff.
Dr. Champ, will Ms. Sabia or yourself be able to share those, since she has some questions that are geared towards the staff with the board?
Yeah, I'm sure she could. Yep. That was it for CCC.
Okay. Any other committee reports?
No. curriculum. I know it's not a report, but I did ask, actually, Alice did have an update for us related to just continued progress in math.
Yep.
That she wanted to be sure to include tonight.
So one of the things that's set to begin tomorrow, actually, is to have drop-in tutoring extended into the middle school for our 8th grade students, specifically focusing, obviously, on our students who will be sitting for the algebra regents. So we're excited about that. Anticipate the same amount of, if not more, participation from our 8th grade students as we've seen at the high school, which continues to be a robust experience for the kids who are there. And so a special thank you to Ms. Sabia, who has set that up, and to our new math interventionist at the middle school, Ms. DeJesus, who will be running the program. So we're excited.
Would it be the same amount of time?
Yep.
The same amount?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So it's starting tomorrow so that we had time to communicate out, have teachers communicate out, rather than wait until Monday. We thought, why not?
Right. What time is the?
It's from 3:15 to 4:15.
Awesome.
That's fantastic.
We're excited.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to Dr. Callahan. Thanks to the teachers that were willing to do that.
Yeah, and this was in conversation prior, you know, as we've all discussed, but it took a minute to make sure that we were going to be able to staff it, to make sure that we were going to be able to find a location for it. And so it has been a group effort, and we're just, you know, anticipating great things.
Yeah, and it's great to hear that it's being taken advantage of at the high school robustly, so.
Yeah.
Is it Miss DeJesus?
Yes.
And she's a new,
She is the new middle school math interventionist, so she's really in the trenches with making sure that skills gaps are being closed. So this is her specialty. This is what she's been hired to do during the day, and she's happy to do it for us from 3:15 to 4:15 on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays for anybody who's listening at home.
That's great.
This has been communicated. I'm terrible at reading emails. So you said that's being communicated by teachers to students, or how are people finding out about it?
So it was something that was communicated home from Ms. Sabia, but also through the school, through teachers, so that the kids knew. However, more so in the middle school than in the high school, parents need to be aware of where their children are supposed to be after school, so they could send those reminders to the children immediately before they go.
You said it's eighth grade.
Yeah, for now, because we have one teacher who's able to be there, and because the students are going to be most likely sitting for a Regents in the nearest future, AKA June, or possibly next year, we thought that was the best way to go for now.
Thank you.
I got to meet some of the new teachers here when we had the new teacher, and so many of them already, I'm hearing the great things that they're doing, so that's really wonderful.
Very proud.
Any other updates?
I don't think so.
Okay. Let's do financial reports and motions. Let's do 6.1 through 6.6 as a consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions or explanatory information? Nope.
Change orders, budget transfers.
Yeah, change orders, budget transfers. The 6.6 maybe was added later.
Yes.
That was,
yes.
and that was, that's brought forward at the recommendation of our Alteris consultant. And it's regarding covering windows to classrooms.
During lockdown.
During lockdown or emergencies.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to have your windows covered normally during the day, and if you're going to do that, you need to have your Board of Education approve it. So this is the formal approach to making sure that that permission is officially provided by the Board of Education to do it. In a lockdown type situation or an emergent situation where the window needed to be covered, the teacher, the staff member then has the ability to do it.
That's one of those places where security guidance conflicts with fire safety guidance. So it gives us a vehicle to reconcile it in the times that we need. Yeah, so that was a last-minute addition. I apologize for that.
Okay.
And I would just point out, too, it's kind of exciting, the 6.5 certainly is the agreement to establish the bowling coach for the new bowling program. So it's up and running. We're excited about that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? No. Let's do 7.1 through 7.4 as a consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any comments or questions?
Just quickly, this is the time of year that we often see resignations for the purposes of retirement. The teachers do have a contractual deadline to let us know by December 1st, and that then they're able to access particular incentives. So it's always bittersweet, but tonight we're recommending or asking you to accept the resignation for purposes of retirement of Mr. David Moskowitz and Robert Lever, teachers from the high school, as well as a teaching assistant who has been at Hutchinson in the library for many, many years. So we're happy for them and this big decision in the future that they have with their families, and happy times ahead, but we're also very sad to see them, their dedication and their expertise leaving the district.
Dr. Champ, you mentioned that they could submit it by December 1st, but they could submit
Yes, yeah,
throughout.
there's particular incentive language in the contract that gives them additional benefits by notifying us by December 1st. Yeah, but they definitely, there could be additional retirement notifications later in the year.
Would this enable us to, I guess, put it in the budget and start recruiting for them today?
Yeah, we probably wouldn't start today, but we did talk about, and I think Dr. Callahan may have actually raised that in, I can't remember which meeting in particular, it may have actually been one of our smaller math meetings. Positions like this that we know are, solid high school positions that we're going to fill, we're definitely going to make a concerted effort to put out those anticipated postings a lot earlier this year so that we can get better access to a deeper pool of candidates before they're snatched up by other districts. If there's new positions in the budget, those are ones that we tend to wait until the budget is passed. Because, God forbid, a budget fails and we're in a position of having to go to a contingency budget, then we have limitations on what gets added into that. So, but for positions like this that we know that are allowable in any circumstance and that we have to fill in order to meet student requests, we'll probably, we were talking, I think we were saying January, February, probably, that we would put out those notifications and start the process.
Big shoes to fill as based on the number of years in the district, but also in terms of the number of classes and sections they teach. I think Mr. Moskowitz teaches every AP World History class this year, so Mr. Lever pretty much every chemistry class.
That's what I mean. We lose a lot of expertise. Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? No. 8.1 is a motion to approve Schedule D. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? No. 9 is new business. No. 10.1, communications and comments from the public. No. So that brings us to 11.1.
Dr. President, would you entertain a motion to adjourn?
Yes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. That was an excellent meeting.
Yes.
Thank you very much.